Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Early morning. Office. A meeting where a young and successful lawyer can barely keep his head upright. Sam can barely keep his eyes on the face of his mentor and boss Vanessa, who is excited about Sam's upcoming victories. Vanessa is gushing to the rest of her colleagues about how Sam has taken on the most difficult court case, of what meticulous style goes into success. But Sam doesn't care about that right now. He just wants to sleep. For the last time, having gathered all his strength in a fist and pretending to be a fighting spirit in the next moment, Sam smoothly transferred everything to a quiet, cool forest, where a brook murmurs in the distance. Birds were singing and bouncing on the branches of 1,000-year-old fir trees. Green grass envelops Sam's face. Somewhere in the distance, under the blue sky, flocks of white birds are circling. Sam lazily rises from the grass, glances at the bundle containing his night tent and smiles, anticipating a night of rest. There is still plenty of time before evening. For now we can relax, he thinks, and slowly reaches for his backpack. In unison with the sound of lightning comes the aroma of homemade cinnamon-baked goods. Mom took care of it. I mean, she's my golden one, thinks Sam as he unwraps a fresh bun in a paper bag. Next, he pulls out a container of fools and cutlets. A second container is piled with fish and homemade tomatoes. Underneath them are several more containers, and the most important treat awaits Sam in the corner of the backpack. It is his portable liter thermos with coffee, with cream, which also Mother herself brewed, poured, and put in the backpack. The Glade turned out great. Only Sam was about to take a sip of coffee aroma. As Sam shouted, "I'm setting you as an example to everyone here, and you disgrace me with your behavior. I can see why it's a promising case. It's going negative day after day. If you don't get a grip on yourself, you've got every right to put an end to your law career." Suddenly, it's Vanessa. Sam opened his eyes and managed to regret 1,000 times that he hadn't stayed forever. "Where I just set up the clearing. I missed something important." "Vanessa, I'm sorry. I just didn't have time for coffee this morning," Sam said, and his eyes started to slip shut again. "Sam, how much can you resort to childish scumbags? Last week, in exactly this condition, you were sitting and negotiating with a representative of our new partner. But you can't do that. It's even just unethical," Vanessa said, trying to sound stern. "I agree with you, but this is solvable in a matter of hours, which I can't find in 24 hours, said Sam. "To finish this habitual conversation with my supervisor as quickly as possible, and once again try to get back to my meadow with my birds chirping." The meeting was finally over. Sam hurried to his office with a thought about the unfairness of life, to human beings, and the infinity of their suffering. He decided to once again gather his strength into a fist and hold out until the lunch break. There it would be possible to take at least a little nap, when his coworkers left for lunch at the nearest cafe. Sam, with such an optimistic mood, began to prepare for the upcoming court hearing. True, in 5 minutes. His hands did not press the keyboard chaotically. The numbers in front of his eyes began to float, and in an instant, Sam again found himself on the forest lawn, where his beautiful meadow was waiting. Untouched favor to the picture added an important detail: four-legged friend of Sam's childhood, Mango, who has long been dead. Mango occasionally appeared in his dreams and took him to distant childhood carefree lands. And here he appeared again unexpectedly and waited for him by the clearing. Sam rejoiced when he saw his little dog Mango. He hugged her, rubbing his face on his coarse mango fur. "It's so good to be together. Don't go away. I feel bad without you anymore," he mumbled, playing with his friend. Suddenly, there was the sound of a gunshot to the face. And at that moment, Sam almost fell from his chair, hearing the squeak and scream of Vanessa. "Sam, now that's the height of cynicism. You just got back from vacation. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" said Vanessa, and walked away. Sam realized with bitterness in his heart that all this wonderful thing that was happening to him was just a dream. And the sound of the gunshot was Vanessa's voice. Judging by the hint in the dream, she wasn't kidding about getting fired. Sam jumped out of his chair and ran after his boss. He caught up with her when she had already entered her office. "Vanessa, I'm offering you a deal." From now on, you pretend not to notice my condition, and I will somehow miraculously bring victories at all meetings. How did he tell you that? Without even talking me into it, I've had enough. You've been saying that for 6 months. I'd be fine if it were true. We know it's just an excuse. You sleep in clubs at night, so you don't have the energy to work. So from now on, your work won't get in the way of your fun. You can go clubbing 24 hours a day. Young people were very different in our time. We read books, went to the theater on weekends, and slept like normal people at night. And we got up at dawn and showed a shocking pace of labor. For me personally, it is just unbearable to see such inertia at such a young age as yours, said Vanessa. You're right, of course. But entertainment is a cost of my work. I can't be in charge of people's lives all day long, and then sleep well at night. I need to see the bright side of life once in a while, or I'll go crazy with the worries of my clients, said Sam. This is a clear sign of degradation and moral decay. If things continue like this, one of these days we're going to have to part with you on ethical grounds. You need to think about that, Vanessa said. Sam sat down on the edge of the chair and clutched his head with his hands. We need to be clear about who's breaking up with whom, he thought with a grin. He would have given up on everything himself and would have been sitting somewhere else a long time ago if it weren't for one big reason. It's a mysterious girl named Alice who works in the office next door. Vanessa, I'm asking you to give me one last chance. I'll make it up to you. I promise. It won't happen again. It's very stupid, even for me. But I can't live without this office, Sam said, taking a seat across from his boss and looking her straight in the eye. How can I believe your words? She asked. Sam felt like cursing, but that would be a failed strategy. He only need to keep Mom here for 6 months to have time to find an approach to this. Also, Sam had to resort to professional secrets. I will honestly tell you, I am very loyal to this company. As it is here from your wise guidance, I have become a lawyer. Who would have thought it? Just 4 years ago, when I came in with a green law graduate, I could not have imagined what professional opportunities would open up for me here. And it's all thanks to you. Vanessa, you're the one leading us the right way, like Moses leading his people through the desert. Along the way, revealing the secrets and subtleties of such a difficult profession. But there is one small nuance. I really want to be believed in me, to be supported, not extinguished for the slightest misdeeds. And I am a young, ambitious, and promising manager who only needs to be directed in the right direction. And I find the way myself. You yourself said these phrases when you hired me. Let's remember those times and try to correct the situation together. Without your guidance, I can't get out of this dead end either. I begged Sam, why do you go into acting? You're wasting your talent. I'll forgive you this time. Thanks to your ingenuity. But let's not make fools of ourselves. You don't keep respectable people waiting in the morning. Keep up your professional ethics. Show up on time and normal. Do your job. You'll be worth your weight. It's a deal, Vanessa said, already visibly changing her tone. When Sam left his boss's office and headed for the kitchen, he heard a familiar voice behind him. What's up, loser? I hope you've already been kicked out for unprofessionalism. Robert, his colleague and competitor, shouted ironically after him. Only after you on the upcoming trial of the Bank 3 Stars. I'll tear you to pieces. You'll lose. You'll face your clients. And then Vanessa herself will not want you here, replied Sam. You won't, buddy. I got it covered. You need to look for a new job instead of consoling yourself. By the way, I saw this ad. They're looking for a lentil delivery guy. Just for you, said Robert snidely. Sam didn't want to escalate the argument. He did not want to waste his nerves on this kidnapped and in love colleague. But his jokes had long since stopped being just jokes. Ever since Sam began to do well, he was unable to hide the fact that he felt outright envy. Sam was even a little turned on by it. I wish I could rub everyone's nose in it every time. Isn't that a good idea? All the more reason for him to deserve it, he thought, pouring himself a cup of coffee a little later. He liked his idea very much. Now Sam was determined to start a new life. In the evening of the same day, Sam was sitting in his kitchen chatting on the phone with a friend. Sam, so what about the rest of the party? The girls are waiting. What time will you be there? A friend asked Max. I'm sorry, Max, but now you and I are not on the same path, answered Sam. What's with the attitude? Are you in trouble? You won't believe this, but I've decided to start a new life. I've hired a coach to help me succeed in my career, conquer this unapproachable Alice, and become a human being. I even have a farm on my refrigerator. I'm creating a new reality. And you said a word about some clubs? I think you're still reeling from last night. Let me fix you up with a couple beers, and you'll come to your senses, Max suggested. No, Max is dead serious. It's not nice to tempt a decent man with the devil's tricks. I risk ruining my reputation. I realize I've made it as a professional, but not yet as a person. And my job is stressful. I'm not clinging to it, though. I could have gotten a job elsewhere without any trouble. But there's one. In the office next door, she's a tough nut to crack. If I don't get her, I can't forgive myself for failing so badly. So I have to be patient with my boss for a while, said Sam. Sorry, buddy. You're really screwed. Max laughed into the phone. You just be a decent person for a couple days. And on Friday night, I'll call you while I entertain the girls. He decided to start a new life. Haha. Max laughed until Sam hung up the phone. No, what? You gotta come to your senses and grow up sometime. So Max doesn't sabotage, we'll move on. Sam said to himself and started dialing his mother's phone number. She picked up the phone quickly. Her surprise was unrivaled. Sam's son. What happened again? She asked, disturbed. Hi, Mom. Why is there something wrong? Can a grown-up son just call his parents and ask about their health? How's Dad? How's his treatment going? Why don't we send him to a resort somewhere? Get away together, Sam said. I'm worried about you. Let's get it straight. What's wrong? You wrecked the car again. There's trouble at work. What is it this time? Asked my mother. Mom, if you don't want to have a serious talk, maybe I shouldn't call you. You don't believe your grown son can finally get a grip on his mind and just become responsible either, said the words of my God. He heard my prayers. Of course I do, son. I do. Besides, it's high time you started thinking about these things. 30 years old is a good age. What was the cause of it all? Mom asked. It doesn't matter. That's not what I'm talking about. That's what I'm calling about. Tell your dad not to worry about me, to think more about your health. I'll give you the same advice. Get plenty of rest. Take care of your health. You'll need it to nurse your grandchildren. That's what you wanted, didn't you? Asked Sam. Of course, son. It's such a long-awaited happiness for us. Who's the bride? When did you meet her? Asked Mom, almost fainting with joy. In a couple of months, we still need to pull up some things at work. I'm still aimed at career growth, and it requires concentration. As soon as I get things straightened out, I'll let you know the date and place of meeting your fiancée. Will you like her? Said Sam, imagining how the noble Alice would impress his family. Then he dialed another number. The husky voice at the end of the line did not immediately recognize him. Andrew, hello, it's Sam. I work in your law firm Platon and Partners. We sometimes cross paths with you when you come to our office, Sam said. Oh yeah, I remember some of the words. Is there a problem? Asked the boss. No, I just wanted to ask about your health. After all, health is a man's greatest asset, especially at your advanced age. But small. I know that's not why you're calling. Speak plainly. There's something wrong with the company. Asked Andrew. Everything's fine. I've got a new case about to close successfully. We're looking at a 6-figure retainer. And you hinted to me a couple months ago that you wouldn't mind defaming the whole company. I'm just thinking about it now. And it feels good. It's inspiring, Sam said. I take your point. But you should know that Vanessa is my most trusted confidant. She and I have been doing business together for 20 years. I can't just throw her out on the street unless she wants to retire, Andrew said. You are right, Andrew. In fact, Vanessa could use a well-deserved rest, as she has been having a lot of problems at work lately, falling asleep in a meeting or forgetting important meetings. But we certainly support her, help her out of deep respect for her status and age. I think we will continue to do the same, even if she gets worse, Sam said. Sam, I hear you. You will notice in her place. Let's keep this conversation between us for now. I'll think about your candidacy. If you continue to perform well, why not? For Vanessa, I can find another position that's less of a hassle, but it'll take time. I'll think about it, Andrew promised. When the conversation was over, Sam felt an unprecedented satisfaction. It turned out that the prospect of growing up was very interesting. It seemed to be the key to all doors. And why hadn't he thought of doing it before? Sam got up, walked over to the refrigerator, and read his detailed plan for inspiration. 3 months from now to meet Alice's parents. 6 months from now to get married. At the same time, he should depose Vanessa and take her place. And in a year, when he will take his son from the hospital, he will celebrate his promotion to vice president of his company. It's beautiful. Now we can sleep. Meanwhile, in one of the parallel realities in another part of the planet, there was a conversation between two executives. Paul, I am glad that we finally managed to enter the market, and soon we will open our branch there. Your merit in this is invaluable. This was the head of a large foreign corporation, Mark. Thank you for your appreciation, Mark. But we can really rejoice when the opening is successful, and we reach the expected figures in just a few months, replied Paul. You are right, Paul. We have big plans and the goals are very important. I'd like to talk to you more about that. To be honest, you puzzled me when you said that you refuse to run the new branch and that you want to be in the background. In that case, I'd like to hear your proposal for a new manager. It has to be a proven person. We need to find one from our own circle of managers on this scale, and you can't take on a new branch from outside. It would be a big risk, Mark said. I see your point. Are you asking me if I have someone in mind? Paul asked. Exactly, the boss answered. There's a guy. He just happens to live in the town where we'll be turning around. I can vouch for him 100%. His name is Sam. We've been friends since we were kids. We haven't talked as much in recent years, but I wouldn't mind doing some serious business with him. He's an accomplished lawyer now, Paul said. And what is Sam remarkable? Tell me, said Mark. It was back when I was a kid. We were both backyard kids. There was a swampy lake not far from our town. We go out there sometimes, swim in safe places. There were markings you couldn't cross. Legend had it, what kind of markings live there? Swamp devils. And if a person gets close to it, the devils can drag you into the swamp. We believed in this legend and were afraid to step over the markings. But one day, when we were playing soccer on the lawn, the unexpected happened near the lake. Our ball flew far beyond the marks. The boys ran after the ball and stopped at the mark, not daring to step over it. Then one of us said that we could quickly jump into the swamp, take the ball and go back along the surface. Before the swamp devils woke up and noticed us. I considered myself the bravest among the locals. It was important for me to save face, so I then said, guys, it's all nothing. There are no devils in the swamps. That's how grown-ups fool us. You'll see for yourself. I'll go get my sword. The boys were surprised at my decision, but no one discouraged me. Except Sam. He said that vanity ruins young men, and we laughed at his words and called him a coward. I went into the swamp. Indeed, the surface turned out to be not so dangerous. After taking a few steps, I reached the ball, grabbed it, and threw it to the guys on the shore. And when I turned around to climb back out, I felt my feet hit a cold and dense space with no support. I tried to lean on the other foot to get out of the hole, but immediately I felt the bottomless density under the second foot. At that time, my companions had already returned to the lawn and started playing, and I panicked when I called for help. The guys didn't believe me. They said I was just scaring them like adults. But Sam didn't argue. He quickly undressed and went into the swamp too. By that time, I was already slowly sinking into the water at full height. The water reached my chest, and the more my legs dangled, the faster I was sinking, and I realized that I would never get out of the swamp. But Sam was already standing a step away from me and pulling my hand out. Sam, get out of here. We could sink together. I shouted to him, no fool. Give me your hand and stop panicking. Shouted back at him. I gave my hand, but my hopes were in vain. Sam too was trapped underwater. I started to dangle my legs harder. I went deeper and deeper under the water. Then Sam shouted to me, Paul, stop fussing, you'll get out. He yelled, I thought he was just calming me down, but Sam realized it in time. Paul, don't be such an idiot. Just stop wiggling your feet. Relax and try to lie on your back. Leave your legs alone, get on your hands and try to get out across, not up, he said. Only then did it dawn on me that Sam was not just reassuring, but actually trying to help. Following his cues, I managed to free one leg, but by then Sam himself was pulled in deep. When I finally managed to get out, Sam was no longer visible on the surface. I was devastated by what had happened. I thought that my comrade had died saving me, but tragedy was avoided. By that time, the other guys had managed to call the forest ranger, who were not far away. Those pulled to the shore Sam, who was unconscious. When my comrade came to his senses, I asked him if he realized that he was risking his life. His answer struck me very hard. He said yes, but I would not have forgiven myself if I had not tried to save you, he said then. Since that day, Sam has been imprinted in my memory as an example of a loyal friend, a brave man, and a real man. This is the man I would like to propose to us as a new companion. Hall concluded his monologue. What? The story is very touching. If your friend in childhood was so wonderful, I think that adulthood has only made him better. Then you should call him ahead of time and feel him out just in case. If he has other plans, we should try to entice him to join us, Mark said. On a most ordinary morning, Sam was awakened by an early phone call. Slavinsky, are you still sleeping there? Did you even recognize your friend? Asked a cheerful male voice. Hall is my friend. How could I not recognize you? How come I remembered you? Did you come or what? Sam rejoiced. Not yet, but I will be soon and for a long time. In fact, that's why I'm calling you. And how do you accept promising offers from old friends? Asked Paul. Well, let's say, and you heard from my boss, Mark. He's opening a new branch office in your town. I'll be the vice president of the new company, and we need a reliable man to run it. There's only one reliable person I know. That's you. How do you feel about running an entire finance company? Your lawyering experience and knowledge will come in handy. You don't have to worry about the salary. Mark values his top managers highly. You'll be on the list of not-so-poor people in a year or two, Paul said. Your offer comes in handy. I've almost hit my ceiling in my little office. I'm looking forward to moving up. When can I expect you? Asked Sam excitedly. If everything goes according to plan, then in about 3 months we will already begin to realize what we have planned. Counting on this time, I will arrive in advance, and the first thing I will do is to contact you, and then the boss himself will arrive. I'll introduce you to him. I'm sure you're paying, Paul said. The friends said goodbye on an optimistic note. Sam hung up the phone and shrieked with joy. Vanessa and Robert, you're both going to the woods for mushrooms soon. And your hated Sam will be flying on private jets and giving interviews to the leading channels of the country. He said aloud. Then he got out of bed and headed for the bathroom, not yet realizing what fate had in store for him. Walking into the bathroom, Sam was surprised not to see his reflection in the mirror. To be more precise, he saw only his head in the mirror, and then in the lowest part. What kind of joke is this? He said and stretched his hand above his head. His hand appeared in the mirror. Sam took the stool, brought it into the bathroom, put it in front of the mirror, and stood on it. And now you can see his full height. True, his height is no longer the same, even less than 1 meter. And his face is the same as it was 23 years ago, when he was 6 years old. Sam was slowly panicking. He had certainly had a good dream of his childhood yesterday, but he wasn't going to literally go back there. He convinced himself that it was some sort of glitch in his perception. Not believing what he saw, he went into the living room and stood in front of the large mirror. Yeah, mirrors don't lie. His childish appearance really came back to him. Sam sat down on the sofa and began to think hard about the reasons for this transformation. But no clue could be found in his head. After sitting for an hour, he finally decided to drink coffee. Suddenly, everything would fall into place. But when I walked into the kitchen, I found a little note next to the coffee maker. You wanted to go back to your childhood, to sleep and play. Here it is. But you can become an adult again at any time if a grown-up girl loves you and kisses you on the lips. He read the words. Then he searched his apartment in vain for someone who could have written it. Called Max's friend, asked tons of questions, went to the mirror dozens of times, and looked out of himself. But from all this, nothing in his new life changed. The time was directly approaching 8 o'clock and reminded him that successful lawyer Sam could not be late for important meetings. Little Sam was frustrated as his short legs struggled to reach the pedals of the car. And if his feet could be placed on the pedal, his head was already below the horizon of the road. His attempts to adjust had failed, and the hours were running out. He had to call a cab. Seeing Sam's successful lawyer, the cab driver ran out of the car, took a passive leather folder from his hands and put it on the back seat. "Why are you carrying such heavy weights all by yourself?" "Dad's briefcase decided to show off at school," said the driver. "He's moving off." Sam was angry at first and then tried to seize the opportunity. "Yes, you're right. My father is an important man, but he's a little sick right now, so I decided to go to work instead and finalize an important deal," said Sam. The driver first laughed, looking into the child's clear eyes through the rearview mirror, and then asked, "Well, how are you going to close an important deal? Do you even know who to tell and what to say? Maybe you're just Sacco eating lessons?" asked the driver. "You're being ironic. I'm telling the truth. I'm an expert on the level of my father. It was he who taught me." "Wouldn't you like to make an extra couple $100 an hour?" Sam asked. "Is that a good idea? What do you have to do? I hope it's not criminal," asked the driver. "How can I encourage you to do something illegal?" "Morals and ethics. That is the basis of public order in my charge," said Sam to demonstrate his reliability. "Mouth said that, but say what you have to do." The driver interjected. "I'm worried that I might not be allowed in my father's place. The masses think in stereotypes, you know. They'll think that since I'm so small, I don't know how to do anything. Maybe you're filling in for me at one of my court hearings," said Sam. "Are you seriously asking me to act as an attorney at a court hearing?" "I have a degree in engineering, of course. But with the lawyer's role, I don't know how well it will work out. I'm afraid you and I will be exposed." "Then there will be trouble," said the driver. "Fear is the eternal obstacle to change in life. It's your right to refuse," said Sam and turned away to the window. "Are you offended? I'm just worried about you." "I don't even feel bad about helping you for free," said the driver, noticing his resentment. "So you agree? That's fine. Here's the plan. You keep your cell phone on at all times. You and I will be in touch. That way I can hear what the others are saying. And I'll text you back. All you have to do is read out the standard phrases. Our job is to get the trial rescheduled to a new date." "That's it. I've said the words." So word for word, Sam persuaded William the cabbie to play lawyer. Technically, everything had been worked out. Thanks to Sam's efforts, the bankruptcy court case was able to be rescheduled to another date. William walked out of the courtroom and was surprised. "Listen, kid, this is how I can become a real lawyer. I didn't know it was that easy," he said. "That's not all. Now you need to go to my client's representative and get the money. He'll be waiting for you in the cafe on the first floor, and I'll be outside on the bench. I'll see you there. I'll give you your fee," said Sam and headed out into the street, a small green garden on the territory of the business center. Sam had noticed this place in the morning. As soon as he saw the fountains, small statuettes of cute animals and squirrels jumping on the branches, his eyes lit up. And now he was hurrying to that place to get a closer look at everything, while William got the money and brought it to him. Sam set the heavy leather briefcase on the bench and headed toward the statue. But on the way, his attention was caught by a cat that was sitting under the bench and looking up, looking up, looking up. Sam saw those very cute squirrels jumping from one branch to another. "I wish I could catch one," he thought, and started looking for ways to climb the tree. The tree turned out to be convenient for the eye not now left. He crept up to the squirrel so that they would not have time to sneak away from him. The cat sat below and watched with interest. This encouraged Sam even more. So he didn't notice how much time passed about the cat and William downstairs. He remembered when he got hungry. Sam let go of the squirrel and went down to the ground to call William. But all his attempts were in vain. Only a couple of hours later, a short message came from Volodya. The money turned out to be good for me, thanks, kid. Good luck with your studies. Sam still couldn't believe he'd been duped. He tried calling again and again, texting William in the style of "so unfair." We had a deal, but all he got in response were smiley faces. As the time approached noon, Sam's phone rang again. There's a reason they say trouble doesn't come alone. It was Vanessa. Sam decided to play along and win at least this phone call. What if tomorrow morning he woke up a grown man again? "Yes, Vanessa, do you have something urgent?" he asked, trying to sound as serious as possible. "Forgive the words. If this is a bad time, I saw on your task list that you have an important meeting today. I wasn't going to distract you for a while." Interrupted? "Yes, I'm listening to you. Speak," said Sam, even more seriously. "Andrew dropped by and said he wanted to talk to you about a serious matter. Said it was important. He promised to come back next week when you're free." "That's actually what I wanted to tell you," the supervisor replied. "Do you know what he's here for? Maybe you have some options." Sam decided to feel the ground under his feet, remembering the recent conversation with the main boss about his promotion. He said we were ready for a new change. He also said something about personnel issues. "I figured that was all he wanted to discuss with you," Vanessa said. Sam was glad that, although his body and manners were childish now, he still had his lawyer's sense and knowledge. He immediately sensed the uncertainty in Vanessa's voice, and he was right. Because Vanessa's evil tongues had already told him that Andrew wanted to make a number of personnel changes. Besides, Andrew himself did not hide his obvious sympathy for Sam when talking to Vanessa. And Vanessa also had her instincts. Having analyzed the situation, she understood everything correctly. Her position of leadership was shaken. Andrew usually acts decisively in such matters. If he wants to appoint someone, he appoints them without a second thought. The same goes for firing someone. Vanessa became uneasy. Wandering around all day chasing city squirrels, crows, and yard cats. Sam didn't notice the evening had come. He was terribly hungry and had no idea what to do in such cases. He also found that his clothes were dirty, and his pants were even snagged and ridiculously torn. As he passed a fast food outlet not far from his house, he smelled the aroma of shawarma and rejoiced. This was what he really needed. He walked into the roadside establishment, took a seat at a table, and ordered all of his favorites. True, he was only able to eat half of his order. When it was time to pay, Sam reached into his pants pocket. That's where the tragedy of adulthood hits him. Not enough money to pay for what he bought. And across the street, a menacing waiter is standing there, losing patience with the boy's slowness with every passing second. "I told you to be careful with unaccompanied children. You can't do anything with them." Now he's going to make you feel sorry for accidentally losing the money. They do that a lot. They spend their pocket money on gambling, and then they get pissy. "He'll clean up his own mess," said his colleague, a girl passing by. "I'm not going to push pity," Sam muttered to her. "But then you're in a hurry, kid. People are waiting for a table to be free," the waiter hurried. Sam thought about it and decided that the right thing to do in this case would be to be honest. And he has no choice. Kids always have a complicated relationship with money. He had plenty this morning, and now he can't even remember where he put it down. After thinking for a few minutes, he took out his cell phone and dialed a number he usually dials very rarely. "Mom, hi," he said with sadness in his voice. "Sam, what's wrong with your voice? Are you sick or a jerk?" asked his mother. "What's wrong with my voice?" asked Sam. "But it's kind of childish, insecure, or something." "I thought it might be something wrong," replied the mother. "Mom, here's the thing. It's a little hard to explain. Dad has to come get me and pay for the shawarma," said Sam. "That's a bad joke, son. You stopped eating kebabs 15 years ago. You like good meat. How could kebab be in your life?" Mother laughed. "Mom, I'm serious. There's a bigger problem here than kebabs. Let Dad come. I'll tell him everything when I meet him," Sam insisted. In the end, the mother bewilderedly agreed to send the father, and at the same time came herself. Seeing an 8-year-old boy instead of a 30-year-old man, the mother and father looked at each other and sighed heavily. Sam was searching for words to explain his mysterious transformation. But his mother sat down beside him and said, "Don't be upset. We all realized what had happened to you. I had a premonition of it," she said, while Frank's father was paying off the waiter. "Well, don't tell us much. What are your plans for life now?" His father patted him on the shoulder when they had already gotten into the car. "I have an important meeting tomorrow. I was wondering if you could go in my place. I'll tell you what to say over the phone. You only have to repeat yourself," Sam said, hiding his torn pants with his hands. "Mother, we should get our son some new clothes on the way. And yes, Lawyer Sam, we suggest you stay with us for a while. We're not strangers after all. We saw you once when you were as old as you are now. We still do. And now we'd love to have you like this," Dad said. "Stop. Mom, Dad, don't you even want to ask me what happened to me? How did you even know what happened?" asked Sam with surprise. Mom smiled and said, "It's your genes, son." Sam was even more surprised. "What do you mean genes? Are you saying that this happened to someone else before me?" he asked. "But Dad, will you tell me or will I tell you?" asked his mother with a smile, looking at his father. "I was 25 years old, just graduated from the institute and got a job. And then bang, I wake up in the morning and see myself like you and small. Of course, I was frightened, but then I found a note on the table that I could return to adulthood only after I was kissed by my beloved. That is, your mother. And she didn't even know I was in love with her then," Frank said. Sam wondered, "Why didn't you ever tell us about it?" "So how did you manage to get out of that matrix glitch?" he asked. "I had to hustle to get your mom to pay attention to me. And then I had to find an approach and win her heart," Dad said. "What a surprise, Dad. I got a letter too. The condition is the same. I have to be kissed by a girl who doesn't even know I'm here. But I'm more worried about the prospects. I've got some big cases coming up. And a promotion. And maybe even the management of a new company. I've got 3 months. What do I do?" "Well, you're gonna have to win this girl over in 3 months. Or can you just leave it at that? You'll grow up in a natural rhythm, take a break from your career, and get a better mind," said the father and laughed. Sam, horrified. "What are you talking about? You're suggesting that I go to school in the morning for 10 more years, then go to university for 5 more years, and go through Vanessa's set of experiences all over again. Oh no, put me in a foster home or an orphanage. But I don't want to go through all that again. I actually dreamed of childhood because I really wanted to sleep. And now I realize how wrong I was. You can't sleep when you're being cheated at every turn, when money's flowing out of your pocket. Every adult looks down on you. Would your own parents be willing to put you in school for 10 years? No, I don't want that," Sam said, and started whining. "But that's enough whining. Dad has experience. He'll help you." "You will, Dad." The mother turned to her husband. "You have to look at it. If the girl is worthy, why not? If our dummy in his 30s fell in love with some bitch, he deserves to be punished by growing up again. Let him go to school and university. Maybe he should even join the army for discipline. And you and I will have a chance to fill in the gaps in his upbringing. That one was frivolous. We'll finally raise a mature man," Dad said. "What's it all about now? We'll go to see her together," asked Sam. "No, son, that would look silly. We're going to focus on growing you into a mature man. As long as you get a second chance," said the father. The family council ended with Sam going back to school soon. Despite Sam's resistance, his parents promised to take care of his upbringing and studies. But he didn't have time to argue much, as he fell asleep at the table after eating his mother's cutlets and drinking the yogurt he had begged for on the way home. Alice woke up in a bad mood this morning because she had been dreaming about her Nick all night. They've been dating for 2 years now, a year of which has consisted of hurt feelings and disagreements. "I have to end it. I don't want that kind of relationship," Alice thought, pouring herself a cup of coffee. But then the phone rang and she saw the caller's name on the screen. It made her immediately forget her plans. It was already warm and bright in the city. "And that's probably because my sunshine is already up and going to work," Nick said. "Where have you been? I waited for you all night last night. Why didn't you even call?" asked Alice. "I was out with my friends. But tonight I'm all yours, he replied. I'll think about it. Tonight I may have plans of my own, said Alice. What can I say then? I suggested it, Nick replied. Alice finished the conversation and realized that her mood had deteriorated even more. True, she had no other plans for the evening and did not foresee any. But the guy's indifference pissed her off. But it wasn't evening yet. The day passed without much fun. Alice had to go to a job she didn't like. All day to pretend to be a workaholic waiting for the end of the working day. When she got off work, she decided to have a little holiday by herself. She made plans in her head. Until a child's voice called out to her. Girl, you're so beautiful. I haven't met anyone like you anywhere else, said a small chubby boy, catching up with her from behind. Oh, hello, you're so cute. Thanks for the compliment, she smiled. And this flower for you? I picked it myself in the garden behind that building. The boy pointed in the direction. Thank you. Why did you get lost alone? Alice asked. It's a long conversation. I really don't want to upset you with my tragic story, said the boy and bowed his head. That won't do. You're a man. Come on, tell me what happened. Maybe there's something I can do to help you, said Alice. She knelt down in front of the boy. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to burden anyone. It's just something I read in a book. Treat others the way you want to be treated. So I wanted to do something nice for someone, the boy said inside. Where are you going now? Do your parents know that you are walking alone in the city? Alice asked. They don't know. They're at work right now, but they're golden. I wander so aimlessly looking for the meaning of events in the world, said the boy. Alice laughed. You're very funny. Would you like to keep me company? I'm going to a cafe. We'll sit nearby, eat, have a nice chat. Then I'll walk you out, said Alice. The boy was happy. I'd love to. Only I have one condition, he said. And what's that? I'll pay for dinner. I have money. I saved it from my allowance. Here it is, said the boy and patted his pants pocket. Oh, you Skoda. Let's go, let's eat first, then we'll figure it out, said Alice. The boy walked beside her, feeling proud that he was walking next to such a beauty. They entered the cafe, took a seat by the window. The waiter came up. For Mademoiselle, the best wine, said the boy to the waiter. Alice laughed. Don't mind him, he joked. I don't plan to drink tonight. And give my vis-a-vis a milkshake and something to eat. What do you like? Alice asked. I'd actually prefer Tartarston, but it's better at Claude Monet's. By the way, next time we'll go there, said the boy to Alice. For now, I think I'll be content with veal and turek, he added. Alice laughed the whole time and ordered herself something fancy too. And he hadn't even told me his name yet. Business boy, Alice said when the waiter left. Sam is my name. I will be immensely happy if you call me just the Lord of my soul, Sam replied. Alice was laughing now. And you know, when beautiful girls laugh, it has the same effect on men as owning the coolest car, said Sam. How old are you, smart? She asked. God willing. Health will be 8 this year. I intend to celebrate this day lavishly. I've already discussed with my parents all the expenses. They'll take care of them. I hope you will not refuse me the honor of being respected my guest, said the words. And how do your parents feel about you socializing with grown-up girls? They would probably be shocked, asked Alice. Don't worry. They have liberal views and everything relationship issue is no exception, although they themselves lead a traditional way of life. They have been married for almost 35 years, said Sam. I think they are unique people. They deserve to tell the whole country on TV about how to raise such a son, said Alice. Would you want a son like that? I asked Sam suddenly. Did Alice blossom? Her eyes lit up. Who wouldn't want one? Of course I would. But his father would have to be like that. I'm having trouble choosing. Men always come across as infantile, Alice said. I understand. I've been through it myself, said Sam and stared at Alice. Did you go through it in kindergarten or something? Alice laughed. I have a long life story to tell in parts. For now, I just want to enjoy this evening. Look at the beautiful couples walking along the streets of our cities. I wish I could join their ranks someday, Sam said wistfully. The whole evening passed merrily, while Alice interjected, and every pearl of the fictitious boy was photographed with him. She videotaped some of his quotes to show her friends. Sam didn't refuse her anything. You won't invite me home, of course, and as a real gentleman in the future, of course, I won't ask. But thank you for the evening. Would you mind if I waited for you at the exit from work from time to time? I asked Sam goodbye. No, I wouldn't mind. The main thing is that parents do not think badly and do not worry, said Alice. She said goodbye and went home in high spirits. Sam time. It's almost 9 o'clock. Why haven't you gotten ready for school yet? Asked my father in the early morning. Dad, I've been doing things since 8 o'clock. I'm working. Vanessa's looking for me. And I've got a meeting with Andrew coming up. We were just discussing my promotion earlier. Now we have to do something about it, preferably without losing money. Dad, you're the only one who can help me with that. So I'll be a couple hours late from work, said my 8-year-old son, who can barely carry his backpack from school to home. Son, save your business for better times. Things will work out. Or will you grow up? Then you'll get organized again. In the meantime, enjoy your childhood. Besides, we've already agreed that this time it's on me and Mom. Frank said, Dad, are you kidding? You're 55 now, and by the time you get me back on my feet, you'll be 75. Isn't that a lot of energy and resources for one kid? So knock it off. I've got exactly 3 months, and I can hold on to what I've accomplished and put myself out there. You'll see, just don't refuse to help me, said Sam. After a long argument, Frank agreed to help his son. Today, they would have a meeting with Andrew, who intended to appoint Sam to run his small company instead of Vanessa. Sam persuaded his father to go to the meeting with him. What would be the result? What will be the reaction of a solid man to a father with a young son? Both have no idea. Hello, Andrew. Permission to come in. A little boy knocked on his door. Boy, who are you? What are you doing here? He was surprised. I'm here with my grandfather. We're here on business. But let's not talk from the doorstep, the boy said. Seeing a child and a grown man, Andrew thought that this is one of the many who regularly ask him to sponsor various social projects. But the boy started talking about something else. Andrew, you know my father well. Sam, I'm his son. And here is my grandfather. We came to you on his behalf, Sam said. And how is that? Why didn't he come himself? I haven't been able to catch him for 2 weeks. Did something happen to him? Asked Andrew. He's all right. You can do all your business with me instead, said the boy. Andrew smiled. No, it won't work that way. I need Sam myself, and you won't distract me. Dismissed, he said, and pointed to the door. Why? Why do you trust the close people of someone who is able to win a millionaire's divorce suit? Why wouldn't you want to deal with those who stood by you? When Sam himself found the victims, alarmed the bank, gathered all the victims, convinced them to write a statement, and then at the trial he was able to prove the bank's guilt. Yeah, he didn't win that case yet, but it's a matter of time. You don't allow the idea that if Sam has such a support group around him, he is capable of making mountains. What does your business sense think about that? Asked the boy. Oh, you're so smart. When will you grow up? You're the one I trust with a lot of things, said Andrew. Well, then consider me a little copy of Sam. In fact, you can even discuss personnel matters with me. I remember my dad saying the other day that he was getting a promotion with your help. I approved of his bold move at the time. If I can impress you, I'm sure I can take my father's place during his absence, the boy said. But that's out of line. The law says I can't hire kids, no matter how smart they are. You better try to get more A's. Then you'll be more useful, Andrew said. I also remembered Dad telling me that the final court hearing was in a couple weeks. If Dad doesn't make it back from his trip by then, here's my phone number, one call from you, and I'll perform brilliantly at the trial. And then it's just a matter of time before you win, the boy said, writing down some numbers on a piece of paper. Andrew laughed. Grandpa, he's not only smart, but also enterprising. Well, I'll know who to consult from now on. You just tell Sam not to fool around and come back soon. Good lawyers are indispensable, Andrew said. That concluded the negotiations. Dad, I don't understand why you were sad. Asked Sam when they went outside. What's there to be happy about? You see, we couldn't persuade him to let you continue working in your childish form. We've failed you, he said. No, it's too early to draw conclusions. It's not that obvious how it all works. The main thing is that we manage to run certain scenarios in the boss's head. Like how I handle the lawsuit if I can't be an adult again by then. That's one. Secondly, we showed him that Sam has a team behind him, which positions Sam as a good, decent family man. Although that's a far cry from reality. I didn't expect him to say yes right away. They're the boss, and they don't decide anything right off the bat. You have to give them an idea a little at a time, and they'll mature slowly. The important thing is that we've started the process. You'll see closer to the case. He'll call me himself, you have my word. What is this? Some kind of lawyer trick? Frank asked his son. Not exactly a lawyer's trick. It's used by all politicians, businessmen, smart officials, and executives of all stripes. If you act slowly, you can tempt a person to do anything. Here, for example, our neighbor Maria lives with her alcoholic husband and doesn't know how to get out of her nightmarish life into another reality. You know, there's a funny thing about that, said the Word. What's the joke? Dad asked. If Maria at the beginning of their novel showed their life together with her husband in a fast pace, there's no way she would have agreed to tie her life to him. It's just that all these alcoholics, tyrants, and other teachers to them know how to play the long strategy. They take it a little at a time. The first time he had a few drinks and just yelled. Maria didn't react or protest. The second time he lets himself push her. She doesn't react. The third time he tries to kick her if she doesn't protest by running away or fighting back. But one day they'll get to the point where her husband will kill her and wonder why the wife didn't fight back for real. Do you see how this works? Asked his father's words when they were already seated at his favorite fast food place. At that moment, a man sitting at a neighboring table stood up and approached them. Hello, I'm sorry to bother you. I assume this is your son, he asked. Yes, my son. A grandson, you might say. He has another son, but he is away. His name is Sam, and so am I. My parents are okay with creativity, said Sam and smiled. The unfamiliar man patted Sam on the shoulder and turned to Alexander Nikolaevich. I am a director. I make movies. I wanted to invite your son to the casting. He is a multifaceted person. He has several talents. One of them can be in the movie, said the man and held out his card. Thank you. We will definitely be there, said Sam and quickly grabbed the business card from his father's hands. Why else do you need a movie when you can't deal with school? Sam asked his father when the strange director had left and they were alone again. It's a chance. Daddy's chance to spin Sam. He's kind of out of the picture. But you're right about the school. I should be getting that place cleaned up. I think I'll take a look at it one of these days. I see the teachers have lost their way, especially the headmaster. I'm not even talking about the head teachers. They're still dancing, said Sam. Where did you disappear those times? When I left you at school, the teacher complained that you were running away from lessons, said the father. I've got things to do, Dad. Life isn't long enough to give decades of years to useless schooling. There they teach you to learn. And a person needs other skills to make money, to make a life and build a career, Sam said. And some skills that are not taught in school. And you yourself became such a person, thanks to what school and university made you so smart. Well, of course, I have my own merit, said my father. Dad, I'll tell you a little secret. 1,000 young people graduate from my school. University, too. But where are they now? Some get drunk, some get into other trouble. And what happens to the girls? Graduates from the same university, same department. One ends up working as an escort, the other marries a future oligarch. Why does this happen? Asked Sam. Well, it's all a personal choice of the individual, I think, said the father. If everything was a personal choice, everyone would choose the most wonderful life. Whatever is possible, if a person could choose, they wouldn't have any problems. It's just that we are not taught anywhere to think according to reality. Neither in university nor in school is it taught, said Sam. So you should be happy that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. All the knowledge you need is already given to you in a ready-made form. You don't have to discover the laws of physics from scratch, discover theorems. Cosine and tangent, said the father. That's true. But it's not enough. Dad, I know dozens of those who perfectly know the laws of physics and still remember Newton's formula, but do not know at what moment to go to the chief and what arguments to convince him of a promotion or salary, said Sam. And what do you suggest? I'm completely confused, my father said when they were almost home. I'm just answering your questions. I'd like to suggest that you don't make me go to school, but take me with you more often. And we'll go to the audition together too. Will you support me? I'll write down the exact words and you'll learn them. You said the word. My God, gave me such a smart son, said Frank. Listen, if you've become so smart, why haven't you grown up to be an executive? Why do you sit in the same office for 5 years? And your salary is not enough for such a mind? Asked my father. Dad, you're smarter than me. But your salary has always been half as much as mine. Well, let's let this argument go. I'll probably disappoint you, but I won't become rich soon or not at all. Normally, wealth grows in proportion to a person's development. But for some people, the proportion is uneven. They may grow as individuals by 10 units, but financially by 1 unit. This means that their mental and personal potential is 9 times greater than the financial capacity of the surrounding reality, said the words. The theory is good, of course, but wealth doesn't hurt anyone, said the father. So it's not denied by anyone. I just want to say, Dad, as a lawyer and as Sam, I'm going to be a lot more valuable than becoming middle-income rich. There are dudes out there who are making $1 billion, but nobody really hears them. They don't know how to influence others, to change reality to their liking. And there's me, who may have $100 in my pocket, but knows how to reach 1 million people. If you judge by money, when I have $100, I will be able to influence 10 million people. That's why I'm not in a rush for financial results, Sam said. But that's it, that's enough. My mom's already calling for dinner, and I have a headache, said Dad, and interrupted Sam at the most interesting place. About the novelty of finally coming to study Sam. Why did you skip classes so many days in a row? Asked the class teacher, when Sam decided to go to school and show himself for once in the last 2 weeks. I had an honorable reason. And have you lost weight well during this time here is holding you a bouquet. It's not worthy of you, of course. But for now, it's all I can afford, said Sam. Oh, really? Said the teacher. But she accepted the flowers. Now, children, open your notebooks and write the theme of today's lesson. Man and nature. Who can say how man and nature are connected? The teacher asked. Later, when all the students had dispersed, Sam raised his hand. Sam, do you have any thoughts on this subject? She asked. Man. Nature forces a large subject-to-subject matrix between them. That means that each subject in that matrix has its own interests, and those interests are honored by evolutionary and social convention. If they are violated, we observe a disruption in the matrix. In other words, natural disasters and human tragedies. Tell me, please, what should man do to correct the current failures of the matrix? Asked Sam. You're good. You get 5 for your answer. And we will discuss the questions. Later, the teacher replied, not wanting to get into Sam's answers. Meanwhile, Sam took the teacher's attention away from himself and spent the rest of the lesson whispering with his new friends. After hearing the latest news from them, he promised everyone that a new carefree life would soon come. On Sam's initiative. Aunt Alice, I tell you so much about my father, but never showed him to you, said Sam at their next meeting. So you said he'll be back from his trip soon. We'll see him then. If he wants to, Alice said. Would you marry him? Sam asked. And Elise laughed. Why do you always have adult questions in your head? Getting married is not like going out for bread. You have to get to know a person better, talk to them for a while, look at them in different circumstances. And only then, if both of them have the same goals for life, you can talk about marriage, Alice said. And it's complicated in your women's heads. You had better heed my advice. There is a very simple way to check a man. If suddenly someone speaks ill of him, you don't want to believe it. Even if he says he's bad, you want to say he's good. If a man like that comes along, you can take him. It's the same with a man. If someone tells him that you are not good, and he will not believe it, then you can be with him for life, said Sam. Wow, that's interesting. How do you know these things? asked Alice with interest. It's my personal experience. The other day I was sitting in my office waiting for you. The cleaning lady was cleaning your office. And when she saw the candy wrappers on the floor, she called you a bad word. I couldn't stand it, went up to her and said that your actually very nice wrapper fell on the floor just by accident. If it had been me, I'd have thought you weren't. And I just thought that even if a man is not a race, he can be asked not to do it. That's it, said Sam. God, you're such a smart ass. I can't imagine what it's like to live with you. You could be followed around with a camera and record everything. Or do I have to follow you around with pen and paper like the ancient thinkers? It'll be a compendium of little Sam's wisdom, said Alice and stroked his head. If you're so interested, I can come live with you, said Sam. Alice laughed again. I would be very happy, and your parents won't report me to the police for kidnapping. She asked. There's a more complicated way, but it's reliable. I'll go to the police and declare that under the Convention on the Rights of the Child, I can use juvenile justice. I'll be taken to an orphanage and then declare that you are and apply for adoption with all the red tape. I'll be 18 by then, but I don't think I'd go for that. It's immoral. And a person has to keep a moral framework every day, Sam said. Alice laughed continuously. And the good thing is to ask your parents for a couple of days, no way. If you want, I'll go with you and say I'll take you on a field trip, Alice suggested. Well, since it's such an interesting offer, maybe I'll start by trying to work it out myself. When are we going? Asked Sam businesslike. This weekend we can go, said Alice. It's a deal. And then I'll stay with you tonight. Aren't you afraid to sleep with strange men? Asked Sam. And Alice laughed again. Frank, hello. You have a call from the police. Is Sam your son? They asked Sam's dad on the phone. Yes. What happened? He was scared. You need to bring your son to the station to testify. Details are on the spot. Waiting for you, said the policeman. Sam was just packing her backpack for a trip with Alice. A frightened mother burst into his room. Sam, what have you done? Is that where they call you to the police station? Asked the mother. Dad, calm your wife down, please. And remind her that her son is a licensed attorney, not some lazy teenager. If he's called to the police station, that means he'll be deciding someone's fate, said Sam. Did you turn the school principal into the police? Asked the mother again. The investigation will determine that. Is the principal, the head teacher, or the parents to blame? I did the main thing. All the mess I saw in the school leaked to social networks, created a resonance. Apparently, the competent authorities reacted. So we avoided a lot of trouble in the future. Mom's not staying late. Dad, are you ready to come with me? Or are you finally going to let me go alone? Sam asked. I'll go with you. Just tell me the truth. You didn't do anything wrong back there. You're a lawyer yourself. I hope you realize that such antics, as then, in your first childhood, will bring us a lot of problems. Father begged. Oh, that's it. You grown-ups are no good. I'll go myself. Stay at home, pray to God, and shiver further. And your son went to do justice, said Sam and headed for the exit. The parents followed him. There were many parents at the police station. As soon as they saw Sam, they pounced on his parents with accusations. What is your son doing? He slanders everyone. The little shameful bastards. We should expel him from the school altogether. Where did he come from? Aren't you ashamed to raise such a schemer? They shouted. One of the policemen took Sam into his office and he came out after a couple of hours. In that time, Sam's parents had a little more gray hair on their heads, and the angry parents were also dispersed to different offices. But I had done my job. Let's go home, Sam said. What was that all about? Why all the fuss? Asked the mother. I met all the boys in my class the first day I came to this school. A few of them stood out. They were Stas, Yura, and Dinama. I talked to them and concluded that they were psychologically depressed. I followed them after class. And what do you think? They went straight for the garages on the next block. High school kids were waiting for them, extorting money from them. I secretly videotaped the whole thing. After the incident, I approached the boys and asked if they wanted me to help them. They tearfully asked me not to tell anyone about it, as the extortionists threatened them and managed to intimidate them. Then I started making inquiries about the extortionists. One of them turned out to be the son of the head teacher, the other of the educational director. The third was the son of some local official. That's when I realized that I couldn't deal with them alone. When I collected all the evidence, I leaked the video on social media, even sent it to the Minister of Security. That was in the morning. They responded immediately. Well done to the parents of the hooligans, and they themselves received a serious warning. And those boys will now be under the scrutiny of their teachers. Justice has been served, Sam said. But how will you study there now? The principal and the vice principal won't let you stay there any longer. They will press you, said the mother. Well, then we'll have to go to the police offices one more time. There's a penalty for that too. Anyway, enough with the gloomy thoughts. Let's go to a pizza place. I haven't had pizza in a long time, said Sam. He and his father struck hands, while his mother kept reciting a prayer. That's how they sat down at the table. I should have made Suryoga some chicken broth today, and that we have lately had a neighbor full of another neighbor. When Sam went out into the yard to chase crows and climb trees. Hello, he said hello to the woman. Stopped in front of her for a few moments and walked on. Hello, boy. Who are you? I haven't seen you here before? Asked Nicole. I'm Sam's son. My name is Sam. I recently moved in, said Sam and walked on. Where'd you come from? I don't remember them having such a small son. The neighbor asked. I'm just a bastard child. I recently won the right to live with my family in court, and now I've moved in with them by court order. Said the woman was dumbfounded by the answer. Sam noticed and laughed. I'm kidding. If possible, I should try to be closer to the neighbors to communicate sometimes. If anything, drop in on us. Sam said and walked away. Nicole walked on. Sam turned around and saw a thin woman barely carrying 2 bags in her hands. Can I help you? Asked Sam. You're too young. You can't handle it, replied the neighbor. But I'll help anyway, Sam said and looked around. His gaze fell on a young guy who was hanging around his car. Hey bro, there's a woman carrying heavy bags, and I'm too small to help her carry them. Maybe you will, and I'll get even with you somehow, Sam said. Hearing the boy's businesslike tone, the boy smiled, silently walked over to Nicole, and carried both bags on or followed him. That's it, thank you. Thank goodness I live on the first floor, she said. When they reached their destination, the guy turned around and walked away. Nicole, and not in a hurry, opened the door with her key, and was immediately surprised to see an empty couch in the living room, where her husband usually lies on and looks at the door waiting for his wife. 3 weeks since he had suffered a minor injury at work and was now on sick leave. Nicole carried the bags into the kitchen. The first thing she did was pull out a whole chicken and set the broth to simmer. Then she decided to look for her husband around the apartment. He was not in the kitchen, in the hall on the balcony, where he occasionally looked in. And when she came to the bedroom door, he was stunned by the nasal sounds of feminine moans. Before she opened the door, Nicole took a seat on the couch in the living room. Her whole life flashed before her eyes. She and her husband had started everything from scratch. Then the children came along, and they had to raise them together, then plow through 2-3 jobs together to give them a good education. And now the children have finished their institutes, found their places in life, and the parents are left alone. Recently, their daughter called them and promised that on the 30th anniversary of the marriage of her parents, she and her husband are preparing a surprise. And the grandson then issued that for the surprise, they are waiting for a trip to some romantic islands. Nicole then thanked fate and looked fondly at her husband, lying with a cast on his leg. Her husband, Robert, who had never been used to idleness before, suffered greatly from the fact that now he had to spend his days in front of the television. He was bored staying home alone. Why don't you at least get me a nanny if you don't want to give up at least one job and be home more? He said that the other day. No, I really love my job. Teaching music is my lifelong passion. I can't imagine my life without music and children. If there is a third school that needs a music teacher, I would be willing to work there too, she said then. Now Nicole realized that at that time her husband was not joking. He should have listened. And in general, there is no trust in these men. As soon as they find a reason, so immediately left. and sometimes they don't even need a reason. So out of boredom, like her affair? No, that's too cruel. Bringing a strange woman into your own home and having fun with her in broad daylight. It means all their journey together is worthless. It means he's been living with her in a fake life, but his soul is elsewhere all the time. What's more hurtful, unloving or betrayal? Or did it not matter anymore? She took out her cell phone and texted her husband just a few words. "I'm filing for divorce. There's no going back." Then she put the phone aside and headed for the exit. As she walked down the stairs, she couldn't hide her emotions. First tears flowed, and all the pain and resentment in her chest turned into bitter sobs. Her gaze immediately fell on a bench near the playground. She went there and sat down on the edge of one bench to cry enough so that no one would hear or see. As soon as she sat down, the silence was broken by a familiar child's voice. "Is there something wrong at home?" asked the joking boy who had just introduced himself as the illegitimate son of his parents. "Yes, you could say that," she replied. "Alcohol is probably like Maria's floor above," asked Sam. "No, my husband hasn't been drinking for a long time. It's something else. You're too old to know. You'll find out when you grow up," said the neighbor. "It makes sense." "So it's cheating," Sam said. The woman stopped crying. I was surprised again. Sam continued talking. Men do it for different reasons. Some out of curiosity, some out of boredom, some just for fun. But they all regret it. When the family code comes into play, Sam said, "How does it work?" asked the woman. "It works in a sobering way. If you want, I'll paint you the prospects of property division in a divorce for adultery, one of the spouses. Then you sit down with your husband in a calm environment and tell him everything," said Sam, and began to tell his professional story. When he finished his consultation, the woman took her cell phone out of her pocket and word for word recited what he had said. In short, Robert was facing the poverty of homelessness and old age at a broken trough. Nicole sent the message and with peace of mind continued chatting with the boy. Until on the corner of her house, she saw her husband sitting in a wheelchair. "Wait, what's that supposed to mean?" "He's outside." "Who's in our bedroom then?" asked Nicole and wondered. "But it's late, madam. Have you already filed for divorce?" "We've divided your property. He knows everything. Now it's just remarriage," said Sam. "But I have a vague suspicion that you've jumped to conclusions. You haven't even seen it with your own eyes. Is he cheating on you?" He added, "Shit." Now at least he didn't have his cell phone on him, Nicole said and headed toward her husband. "Robert, how did you get here?" she asked, approaching him from behind. "Oh, hello, darling. I thought you were coming from the other side. I was waiting for you. Why were you at the grocery store so late again today? Looking for the best chicken and the best meat? I told you not to spoil me like that. I'm better now. I'll be back at work next week," Robert said. "No, you tell me. How did you end up on the street? Who pulled you out and where's your cell phone?" Nicole asked. "I think I left my phone in the apartment. A friend of mine helped me out. It was his day off today, and he and his friend Olsia decided to visit me. They asked me what I wanted. So I honestly said that I would like to get some fresh air. They took me out, and they're sitting at home waiting for you. I turned on the TV for them." Robert answered. Nicole knelt down in front of her husband and hugged him. "Are they in the bedroom?" she asked. "Well, yes, they must have had a few drinks. Let them rest. I authorized it myself," Robert said. Sam winked at the neighbor and went on his way. "Mom, tell Dad not to call every hour. I'm an adult, after all. I have a personal life, among other things. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow," said Sam and hung up. "Where is he, anyway? Where is he going to spend the night?" asked excitedly Frank. "He said at the girls," said the mother in a whisper. "What girl?" laughed the father. "You're laughing, but he's been having a pen pal affair with some Alice. From what I understand, she's crazy about him. So there you go. Your son was impossible to ask for any bride in his adult life. And when he became a child, he was a catcher," said the mother. Meanwhile, Sam was the happiest man going on a day trip with Alice. "Do you really not have a boyfriend? Or do you just don't want to upset me by talking about him?" he asked on the way out. To be honest, he's gone. After I saw you, after I listened to your childishly smart advice, I realized I was just fooling myself. Looking at your directness, I realized how important it is to be honest with others and with yourself. So I put an end to a failed relationship. I told Alice. You did the right thing, said Sam and patted her on the shoulder. And my dad would never cheat on you, he added, looking out the window. By the way, when is he coming at last? You've told me so much about him. I can't wait to see him, Alice said. He's very sensitive, and he's coming after a momentous occasion. Of course, you could influence this event, but I don't know. We'll see about that. It's a sensitive issue, Sam said. Show me his picture, asked Alice suddenly, but finally. Because I thought you'd never ask for it. Look how he is, said Sam and showed his picture from his former life. He's cute. I feel like I've seen him before, said Alice. No wonder. He told me that he was purposefully dreaming about you at night, so that fate would unite your life paths. You've seen him in your dreams. He's your dream. That's how you know him, said Sam, and they laughed. Would you want a son like that? I asked Sam later. But I think no one could refuse a son like you. What are your plans? Do you want to leave your parents and become my son? Alice asked. No, you could really have a son like me. If you and my father work out, you just please be honest with him, said Sam. But either way, you and I will remain friends, said Alice. Not that it'll last. Oh, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about something more interesting. Women or men? I love gossip, Sam said and sat down. Come closer. Throughout the journey, Sam entertained Alice with his witty phrases. As always, he had the goal of making Alice fall in love with the image of an adult Sam, who could come back if she loved him. After the tour, Alice was going to walk her little friend home, and we had a different arrangement. You promised I'd stay the night at your place. Was it for nothing? Did I make a deal with my parents? I remembered Sam. Oh, okay, just for one night. I've never been around little kids after all. I'm just worried, said Alice. Alice had noticed since the morning that her little friend was always looking away, looking nervously at his phone. He answers someone briefly and drops someone else's calls. In short, he can't tear himself away from his phone. One of these conversations took place with Andrew. Sam, hey kid. So when can we expect your dad? I already told Vanessa. She's getting ready to be assigned to another company, and we're expecting your dad instead. What kind of irresponsible attitude is that? How can a businessman be so careless? He was indignant. Andrew, everything is almost solved. How about appointing me in his place for now? I can handle his duties. That I promise you, Sam told him. No, don't make me laugh. You better tell your daddy I'm willing to wait another week for him. If he shows up, let him take over. And if not, then let him go on with his dark deeds. That's what he said. And then Paul called several times. He was already in the city and hurried to meet his old friend. At the same time, they were going to discuss the details of their business together. But even then, they had to work around it. Kid, I don't recognize my friend. How come he gave his cell phone to someone and then disappeared? It's all very strange, he said into the phone. If you're his real friend, you should understand and believe him. He's got one last task left. As soon as he does it, he'll show up right away. You please, show some more patience and wait for him. I convinced Sam. Who are you to him? A nephew, I guess? Asked Paul. No, I'm his son. He just didn't tell anyone. I made sure everyone knew. But he and I have been in close contact all this time, and I know everything he does. Said Sam. What a surprise. So many years of being friends with a man and not even a hint of a baby. Baby. I'd love to get to know you too. But you better hurry up, 'cause the big people have their hopes up. It's no good keeping them waiting. Paul said goodbye. Yeah, sending my father in his place won't work this time. Better to seek rescue from Alice, Sam concluded. And with renewed vigor, he began to conquer her. Now the lady must rest, and the gentleman will take care of the surprise. What would you like for dinner? Asked Sam, when they finally reached Alice's apartment. Can't we just order a cooked meal and watch cartoons? Suggested Alice. And when you have a husband, will you also offer to order cooked food and watch soccer with him? Asked Sam. Alice laughed again until her stomach cramped. Sam, for all the time I've known you, you have asked me so many questions about my non-existent husband and about my relationship with him that I even feel married and with a child like you. How do you manage it all? She asked. I just really see you as a good wife and mother. And do you mind? He asked. To be honest, I'd like that too. But I'm trying not to be starry-eyed. You have to be realistic. There is no such person who just one-in-one guesses your wishes and all the time on the same wavelength with you. Adults are more complicated. They can change their minds at any time. And the worst part is not telling you about it, Alice said sadly. My dad's not like that. He's in over his head, said Sam. Everyone thinks so. Why do you live? By everyone's standards, you're centered on yourself. Because I've noticed. Do you want to fit in with the general rules? Like, do you want pure love? But I've been trying to prove to you all this time that if a person is interesting to you, and you to him, it's easy to grow and nurture love on such soil. And you adults do the opposite. First, you cultivate love in your head, and then with closed eyes you look for points of contact in a person. And maybe he wasn't there in the first place. Finding the real truth. Disappointing, said Sam. What are you getting at? I sometimes lose the thread of the conversation. My point is that you have a better chance of building a strong relationship with my dad because I'm already building an image of him in your head. You already have an idea of him, and you'll notice that I'm not hiding the fact that he has his faults. For example, he likes to have fun like me in a childish way because it helps him regain his energy. And so when you see him, try to trust and love him. He will love you for sure. You will be happy forever. Then, if you want, you can have a son like me. If you want, you can have 2 or 3 or 4, all of them like me. That's great, said Sam and winked with one eye. Listen, you talk so much about your dad. I can't wait to see him. How about we call him on the video now and talk to him? Alice suggested. Sam got excited. It seemed his goal was close at hand. He crossed his fingers behind his back and prayed to God. There is an easier way. He can appear before you tonight or tomorrow morning. Only for that you have to do something, said Sam. What? Asked Alice. Well, kiss me, for example. Alice laughed again. You leftist. Strangers don't kiss strangers. It's just unethical. But that doesn't mean I'm mean to you. It's just that boundaries and distance is good for everyone. Alice said as she made up the bed in the living room. She then tucked her little friend in, put her teddy bear next to him, and retired to her room. Alice got up early in the morning to take the stranger's child to his house on time. She went into the kitchen to make herself some coffee, but when she saw the picture, she almost fainted. Sam was lying face down on the floor. He had a small paper in his hand. Alice ran to him, turned him over on his back, and started shaking him. But there was no reaction. She took the paper and once again was shocked by the writing. I have no reason to live in a world of such sentiments of adults. She wrapped her arms around his head and started crying. I'm sorry, baby, how could you do this? Why did I have to suffer such grief? What will I tell your parents? I'm sorry if I hurt you in any way. Just open your eyes. You have to live. You're gonna be fine, Sam. Open your eyes. God, what have you done? Fussing. She's wiping the tears from her face. A few minutes later, the ambulance she'd managed to call arrived. The doctor examined the boy and was surprised. All his vitals were normal. Maybe it's just a person sleeping so soundly. But just in case, we are taking him to the ward, he said. The other took Sam in an armful and put him on a stretcher. Alice went out after them, and lastly decided to address her friend once more. She walked over to the supposedly unconscious Sam and placed her cheek against his cheek. His cheeks felt warm. Then she gently kissed his forehead and whispered in his ear, I will be by your side no matter what happens. You'll come to your senses very soon and you won't do anything stupid again. Guys, let's go to the clinic, the doctor said. And you lady, if you want, you can follow us, he added. Wait, I'll stay. There was a voice from the ambulance cab. Someone knocked from inside. It was Sam. Thank you all for your attention, but I'm better now. I have to run an errand, he said. Nimbly jumped off the stretcher and ran away. Well, there you go, lady. You shouldn't have bothered us for nothing. The kid decided to play a trick on you because he's just a kid. The fine for a false call will have to be paid by you, the doctor said, turning to Alice. Paul, how long can we wait for you? You've been in my city for a week and you still haven't met me. Come on, come out to your friend. He is waiting for you under the window, said Sam on the phone. Paul came out a couple minutes later. They hugged and greeted each other. What are you doing out on the street like that? Let's go home and we have a lot to talk about, said Paul. Listen, where the hell have you been? But that boy who was carrying your phone is a smart one. He was doing a great job as your assistant. He was even willing to take over for you. Who introduced him to me? Paul asked. First things first. Yes, I will as soon as he is born, said Sam and smiled enigmatically. So here's the conversation. We're all set. Opening in a couple weeks while the office is getting ready, final touches are coming. You and I will go there now and meet Mark tonight. He'll sign the order appointing you. That's the end of the story. By the way, what about personal? We have a traditional approach to our image. You should think about getting married. It'll give you credibility in Mark's eyes. Anyway, it's time you and I made up our minds, Paul said. I'm ready to get married. I just have to ask a young lady to marry me. Or maybe wait until she offers it to me. Sam said thoughtfully. The meeting with Mark. That evening. Sam had really impressed him. The arrangements had been made. All that remained now was to get down to business. When Sam was finally on his way to his apartment with peace of mind, the bell rang. Sam, where are you going? Are they asking you at school? Can they expel you if you don't show up? A month of truancy. That's no joke. Stop what you're doing and get to school, said Frank. Dad, tell them that your son has decided to skip school and go straight into a career and the family doesn't need to pretend anymore, said Sam. It happened. Congratulations. Who's the sorceress? Frank asked, when he realized his son was an adult again. About the rest. Then Dad to Mom and say hi and wait for news from me. All bye, he said lastly and started dialing another phone number. Sam, you're elusive. Where the hell have you been? Maybe the kid will go to lead instead of you. And you are going to hide. Andrew replied threateningly. Vanessa's place has been vacant for a week now. She's moving to another company. When are you ready to start? He asked. Andrew, thank you very much for your trust in my person, but I decided to go elsewhere, said Sam. But I'm very grateful. And to Vanessa for mentoring me too. We're not saying goodbye. I'll always be in touch. And expect a wedding invitation from me soon, said Sam. Oh, there it is. Well, if this is the way it's going to turn out, it's all for the best, said the former boss. Sam went to his apartment, put it in perfect order, and enjoyed his life. How good it is when you don't have to make up anything, tell everyone everything as it is. And yes, my adult life wasn't so bad, he wrote in his journal a couple minutes before there was a knock on the door. He went to open the door, and there was a girl standing there who looked painfully familiar. Hello, you must be Sam's dad. I'm his girlfriend. He was just a little sick this morning, and I've been worried about him all day. I wanted to visit him, so I baked his favorite pie, the girl said shyly. Well, hello, Alice. Come in. Is your friend waiting for you? Said Sam and smiled. Alice was nervous and fussed the same daddy Sam. Really turned out to be so gallant, courteous, and interesting, as that little boy described. To keep the conversation going, Sam had to tell the whole story. Alice laughed. She was indignant. She was surprised. But in the end, she was convinced that it was a wonderful story. I was really from beginning to end. So there was no such boy. But I grew attached to him. He convinced me that my son would be just like him. And I believed in that reality. I told Alice sadly. He was telling the truth. Such a Sam can indeed appear, but he can only appear with you and me. I would like that very much. Are you ready to go with me in life, to raise our children and admire them? Asked Sam, kneeling down. I'm looking forward to it, replied Alice. A few days later, all the people close to Sam finally waited for news from him. Each of them received an invitation to the wedding, and the young barely had time to prepare for the event. On the one hand, the opening of a new company where Sam is the head. On the other hand, a gathering of loved ones, pleasant troubles, But in moments of fatigue, the bride and groom remembered their goal about little Slavic, and all the fatigue vanished at once.
Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. An inability to say no and a lack of determination had always been Michael Matthews' weaknesses, and it was strange because his parents achieved a lot in life just because they did not suffer from any of these things. Or perhaps the whole point was just that nature had rested on the son. Michael's parents were successful and wealthy people. They had a family business, a country hotel. Regardless of the season, there were always plenty of people wanting to stay at the hotel. That's why the Matthews business was booming. The business took up almost all of Ethan and Adriana's free time, and as it often happens in such cases, the boy almost never saw his parents. That didn't mean the boy was on his own. Not at all. Even before school, Michael's life was scheduled not by days, but by hours. English courses, public speaking, computer literacy, swimming pool, fencing, golf. This is not a complete list of courses and sections where the ever-busy parents determined their only heir. Michael faithfully went to one course. But more often than not, it happened that the boy Anna needed and gave. What's the matter? Adriana was invariably interested. Yes, but not interested. From the edges of the martyr grimace answered the son. I see, nonchalantly nodded the parent. After that, he would surf the internet for some new courses, and after a while, everything was repeated again. One day, Michael rebelled. You asked me what I wanted for once, but I'm not interested in your public speaking and yoga. Adriana gasped. But you're the son of some of the town's most respected people. Dad and I want you to be a well-rounded man. You know, well-rounded. Did you go to any of this stuff yourself before we became successful? Michael grinned crookedly. I don't have time to socialize with my friends, and they look at me like I'm an idiot. No, look at him. His mother shook her hands. No time to hang out with friends, you say. That's good. There won't be time for nonsense. Ethan, but say something. What can I say? My husband sighed. Our son has grown up to be an ungrateful man. We pay a lot of money for our son to become an interesting and cultured man, and he still turns his face away. He's not interested, you see. Have you ever said what you want? Anyway, the conversation went nowhere. Michael had an ally in Adriana's maternal grandmother. Cindy thought that such a number of sections and other, as she said, rubbish was unthinkable for a teenager. You're just taking away a boy's childhood. More than once said Cindy, but her words, apparently, were for her daughter and son-in-law an empty sound. And then 7th grader Michael went to extreme measures. One day he didn't come to school. That day the class teacher did not pay attention to his absence. But when Michael didn't show up the next day, Christina called Adriana and asked what was wrong. What do you mean he hasn't been here for 2 days? She was stunned. Where is he then? But it is you who should know where your son is, Christina replied with a faint chuckle. Michael has not attended school for the 2nd day. That's what I'm asking you. What's wrong? You're asking me what's wrong, Adriana exclaimed angrily. You're a classroom teacher and you get paid for it. But you know, Adriana resented the class teacher. With all due respect, you're wrong now. I get paid for classroom management and teaching discipline. But what happens outside the school, is on the shoulders of the parents. Michael left home and went anywhere but school. But how, pray tell? I should know where your son went. Adriana, for all her authoritarian ways, could admit when she was wrong. I'm sorry, Christina, she said. You're absolutely right. It's just not every day that you find out that your son is absent from school for a 2nd day. Yes, I understand. The class teacher softened. Thank you. Of course I'll take action. And Adriana, none of my business, of course. But meanwhile, Michael walked around the city, reveling in his freedom. Of course, he knew that when his parents found out, they'd make a big fuss. So what? Michael sincerely believed that the game was worth it. and let them shout not as a gimmick. The main thing is that the ancestors finally understood. He, Michael Matthews, would only do what he was interested in. In the evening, when his parents came home from work, he watched TV. I wonder if Marisha had already reported Michael to them. She probably did. "Hi," Adriana said in a friendly voice. "Hi," a little warily replied the son, puzzled. Don't they know anything yet? However, "Michael, I got a call from Christina today, but now it's going to start doom." He thought and sighed heavily. But strangely enough, neither mother nor father were in any mood for scandal. Quite the opposite. "Michael, do you know what your trouble is?" Adriana asked. "You don't know how to speak." "No, learn, or you'll have a hard time. We wanted what was best for you, but you don't talk. So I thought you were fine with it." "Yeah, well, that's fine. We're our own people, but you're gonna have a lot of people in your life. And if you let everyone ride on you, you won't last long. Learn to stand your ground." Michael nodded. He wondered why his mother had brought it up. And his father, instead of giving him a good beating, had chosen to remain silent. He had some thoughts, though. Christina had brainwashed the mother, too. She loved it. Michael mentally thanked the class teacher and took note of his mother's words. But unfortunately, to say no, never learned. And it was this shortcoming that influenced his fate in a bad way. As for the lack of purposefulness, then here the parents were partly to blame. Michael had no idea what he wanted from life, and all because his parents planned his son's life for many years ahead. Parents programmed it. Michael does what he's told. After that incident, Michael returned to school safely. He studied without much enthusiasm. Thank God, at least they're off the hook with clubs, courses, sections. Study. After school, you'll enter the hotel business department, and it would be good to enroll in courses on the basics of entrepreneurship. You're going to continue the family business. My mom and I will give you some pointers, of course. But life doesn't stand still. Michael mentally scolded himself for his inability to say no, but in the end, he decided that his father was talking business because he really will inherit the family business, which means he has to learn how to run it. And do I want to do business? The teenager thought about it and decided that rather no than yes. More precisely so, with his character would be worth trying himself in something else. But here's the thing. Tried a great many different directions. Michael never realized what he was interested in. No wonder. He didn't go there of his own free will. That's one. And when after training in the pool you gallop to the English course. Then you take a public speaking class at the same pace. Nothing is interesting except a warm, soft bed. After a hot dinner and a cup of tea, that's two. And after high school, Michael enrolled in hotel management. And what's most interesting, he liked it very much. So maybe with business everything will not be so hopeless. He thought happily. The main thing is to be passionate about it. His parents, of course, were over the moon. Now they were sure the business would be in good hands. The guy was keen on studying, did not drink, did not smoke, not to mention anything else. Basically, he was on the right track, and that's half of success. But half. In his third year, Michael fell in love for the first time. Of course, there were kindergarten and then school hotties, but it was in the third year that the guy realized that this was his true love. Young people met at a disco in honor of the initiation into students. It all started with the fact that the girl invited Michael to a white dance. "Do you mind?" she asked cheerfully. The question was obviously rhetorical, and it was asked, it seems, with one single purpose: to make sure of his own irresistibility. And yet there would hardly be a guy in the whole institute who objected to this slender, long-legged brunette with huge, slightly slanted golden brown eyes, plump sensual lips, and straight shiny hair down to her waist. Michael nodded his head with a smile, and the young people twirled in a dance. The girl smiled enigmatically, and in the middle of the song she suddenly pressed herself against Michael as closely as if they had known each other for 1,000 years. and the relationship between them was the closest that could be between a boy and a girl. He was embarrassed and tried to pull away. "I'm sorry," the girl whispered. "I just seemed to lose my head," and pulled away. Michael was discouraged. This dark-skinned beauty had lost her head to him. No, he wasn't ugly, fat, slouchy, lame, or out for baldness. But for a strange girl, and even such a gorgeous girl, to lose her head so much that she seemed to be ready for anything. In general, April from Nice, who behaved in this way, seemed Michael available. But why not flirt? "It's no big deal," he whispered back. "It's even flattering. It's also so intriguing. I'm dancing with a girl. She's snuggling up to me, and I don't even know her name. And you're sure you want to know it?" The beautiful girl grinned, and that grin made Michael hot. It would be nice to tease her. "What then?" "My name is Kelly, and I'm Michael." "Oh, it's official." She jokingly rolled her eyes. "But it's still a pleasure." "You too." The slow dance ended, giving way to a rousing tune. But Michael and Kelly kept spinning. They were being pushed. And one overly agile dancer, a tall, long-haired guy in a brightly colored t-shirt and tight jeans, managed to knock a couple off their feet. And a couple seconds later, he swung his long arms awkwardly, plopping down on top of them. "Sorry, guys, I got carried away." "It's okay," Michael replied, wiping his bruised thigh and offering a hand to Kelly. "Wow," she laughed. "It's called dancing till you drop." "Yeah," sneered the culprit. "But you'll excuse that again." The young man left, and Kelly offered to sit in the lobby. "I have a headache," she complained. Michael nodded, suspecting that there was no headache at all. Kelly clearly wanted to get to know him better. "Don't flatter yourself with irony," Michael thought. "You're quite the ladies' man." But there was genuine interest in the brunette's eyes, and the guy felt that he was not flattering himself. That's right. What was he, Michael? Matthew's worse than the other guys. "I guess you got in this year?" he asked. "I've just never seen you here before." Kelly smiled at that. "And you are?" "I'm in the 3rd faculty. Hospitality business." "No kidding. It's just that I got into hospitality too. Now I'll know who to call for help." "I hope I can count on it," the girl asked flirtatiously. "But of course," grinned Michael, suddenly feeling experienced, seduce. And it didn't matter that it didn't correspond to reality. Apparently, these things happen to themselves. He also had the unfortunate thought that Kelly looked a little older than a freshman was supposed to. "What's old?" she asked with a chuckle. Michael winked, as if his thoughts were being eavesdropped on. "But why the awkwardness?" mumbled the boy. "Do you look okay?" "You're an idiot." "Good." "Yeah, she looks divine." I meant to say yes. "I know you meant to say fun," laughed Kelly. "And as for my age, I'm in my 20s. "I didn't say anything about your age," Michael noted. But he thought shrewdly, though. He thought, why would I need to know her age? The new acquaintance lived in a dormitory. And that evening, she invited Michael to her room for a cup of tea. She winked slyly. The guy was finally convinced that Kelly was an uninhibited girl and decided that she was the one he needed. It was not their last meeting. The heir to the Matthews couple was crazy about the passionate beauty and was not ready to part with her. At first, Michael thought it was more like a simple affair. Too frankly, Kelly coquettes at the disco. But what happened next was not at all like a serious relationship. But Kelly had an opinion about that. If two people realize that they want each other, what difference does it make when it happens in 2 o'clock or in 2 weeks? Some people procrastinate for months to prolong the intrigue, and then it turns out they're not right for each other. Frankly, Michael never gave it much thought. It was a given for him. Two people walking around holding hands, and only after a certain amount of time do they get to know each other more intimately. But I don't like the rituals, the candy bouquet, the period, and all that nonsense, she said. So the guy has had his day and won't give the girl a flower or a tiny chocolate bar again. But I gave you one. Aha, Kelly said in a satisfied voice. What did you have to prove? It doesn't make any difference now or in an hour. Michael liked that his new friend had her own opinions on everything, usually scathing, but generally correct, as it was called, not in the eye, but in the eye. He had never thought about many things before he met Kelly. She is unlike anyone else. Michael thought of her with delight. After a month, he realized he had fallen in love like a sixth grader. Reaching for his rapture, Michael was ready to lay the whole world at Kelly's feet. But since the whole world at Michael's disposal was not, the guy gave her flowers, took her to movies, cafes, saunas, and clubs. He spent almost all his time with Kelly. And one day Ethan said, at least introduce us to his girlfriend. It'd be interesting to see what kind of a marvelous, for which you forgot about everything in the world. Why would I forget? What do you mean? Why? My father snorted. You only come home at night. You come home at 0 o'clock. You're always flying around in the clouds. In the rare moments when your mother, and I do see you, you're always thinking about something, smiling and looking stupid and so stupid, so very stupid. Ethan winked. Kelly, how would you like to meet my parents? Are you sure? Rounded eyes. Well, since I'm suggesting it, I'm sure. Michael laughed. Sweetheart, it's okay. My parents asked me to introduce you to them. What if they didn't like me? Oh, honey, the main thing is that I like you cheerfully, he muttered. And then I'm sure they'll like you. But I'm not so much, the girl muttered. I don't recognize you. Where did your self-confidence go? I don't know, Kelly shrugged. I guess all girls get a bit of a chip on their shoulder. When it comes to meeting the parents, don't worry, I'm with you, he said. To Kelly, that phrase sounded not only trite, but also extremely unconvincing. After all, in their relationship, she played the first violin. The client seemed to have matured in an impassive voice, reported on one end of the wire. Good, the subscriber rejoiced, and having listened to the report, said that almost half of the case is done, but it is almost clear what I mean. How much clearer? And if he doesn't? Well, that's your problem. Kelly, who are your parents? Adriana asked. My parents? She asked. My parents live abroad in England, and you decided to stay here. The landlady was a little surprised. Yes, I mean, no. Anyway, they're there temporarily. Mom, but Kelly is studying here, Michael intervened. Yes, of course. Adriana nodded and stared at the guest. Kelly, why don't you try the chicken with salt and vegetables and white sauce? Ethan suggested in an unreal social tone. I'd love to. Kelly replied with a dazzling smile. Ethan studied the hotel news and currency exchange rates while his wife removed her makeup. She's kind of slippery. She broke the silence. Adriana, what are you talking about? Husband. It's not what, it's who. With a sigh, she clarified. And our son's friend. This Kelly. She didn't seem suspicious to you. Well, a little, Ethan admitted. Adriana exclaimed a little. Yeah, she's fake through and through. It's not clear where the truth is and where the lies are. And is there any truth in what she says? Well, you mother, you give, shook his head husband. Where do you get such conclusions? Oh, Ethan, are all men so blind? Perplexed, she asked. You can't see further than your nose, but Michael's all right. He's head over heels in love, and it's going to take a lot of hard work to prove the obvious to him. But you've always been a cool thinker. I guess I really don't understand something, Ethan said thoughtfully. I don't know. Take my question about my parents. Did you see the way her eyes went wide? That's just it. What's the big deal? I asked. Well, you know, maybe she doesn't have a good relationship with her parents, so she doesn't want to talk about them. Very possibly, Adriana agreed, settling into bed next to her husband. But that's her yes. I mean no. And then this girl remembered that her parents were supposedly temporarily living abroad. No, Ethan, I'm sensing something fishy here. Yeah, you're probably right, husband. So maybe we should run her down. I'll call Christopher tomorrow. See if he can dig up anything interesting. You know, Ethan, Something tells me it's a last resort, Adriana said slowly and confessed. I have a bad feeling about this. Oh boy, why would that be? I don't know, but it's definitely there. You're just getting yourself worked up, said Ethan. He put his arm around his wife's shoulder and kissed her on the temple. Good, if that's the case, she sighed. So how's it going? Asked the big, brutal-looking man. It would be all right, but his mother can confuse all the cards. Not a woman, but an X-ray. Kelly sighed, settling down on his mighty chest. Damn, the big guy came out. I don't feel like going to extreme measures, you know. It's a little early, and I don't want to show my face. What do we do then? Do what? With a chuckle, he asked again. Are you asking me? Smoothly led his Romero to talk about family life. And of course, pleasing him. How can you do that? The man chuckled. And Kelly erupted. Christopher, what's my star? I said something wrong. I think it's all business. Aren't you jealous? Sad? She asked. It's business, baby, Christopher replied admonishingly. And I suggest you treat it the same way. And all that, leave it to the losers. You better think of a way to get that chick to propose to you. He's actually talking about getting married. And he said he's gonna propose to me when he graduates, answered Kelly and winked. Although I think Michael is ready to get married tomorrow. Christopher smiled and said with a deep smile, perhaps I should reconsider. I could get jealous. I'll be glad. You and I will be glad, he promised. But let's get back to the chick. Kelly giggled. Yeah, so you're saying Michael's ready to get married tomorrow? I think he is. But he won't. Okay, so we have to make him get married. How? Oh, I have to teach you everything. Don't tell me you don't know it. The old-fashioned way women lure men into marriage. Michael, there's something I need to tell you. They were sitting in a cafe near the Institute, having coffee and cakes. I'm listening to you carefully. Michael smiled. Anyway, shit. I didn't realize it was so complicated, Kelly said in a confused voice, and lowered her eyes. What's the big deal? It's just that I'm pregnant. She flipped through it and smiled awkwardly. That's just the way it is. So what's the problem? And Michael smiled cheerfully back. Nothing terrible has happened. My favorite girl is expecting a child. And now we'll get married. We're getting married, Kelly asked incredulously. But you said you had to study, get on your feet, and only then think about children. Well, I did, the boy nodded. But circumstances have changed. Anyway, Kelly, marry me. I'm sorry I don't have a ring. Sorry. That means, yes, Kelly nodded. So this calls for a celebration, exclaimed the newly wedded groom. But her beloved shook her head. Michael, my darling, we will celebrate. But now I'm running away to the dorm tomorrow to learn a lot. You understand? The first course. I understand, he nodded. What's my cramming? Then I'll walk you out. But not with a smile, Kelly shook her head. I still have to run to the library. If you say so. I think I'll order another coffee. 0 o'clock study. I'm sleepy. I can't sleep. Oh, you poor thing. Sympathetically stretched out the girl and took a bite. Michael on the cheek left the cafe, and the happy groom headed for the distribution. If he had looked back, he might well have seen Kelly heading in the opposite direction from the dormitory. Christopher, congratulate me, solemnly announced the new daughter-in-law of the country hotel owners. Michael proposed to me, and I had no doubt about it, he replied, rubbing his hands together happily. So this is something to celebrate. What do you think? Are they in cahoots or what? Grinned to herself. And out loud she said, that's a wonderful idea. And what do I mean? Christopher smiled, taking a bottle of expensive champagne, glasses, and a box of chocolates from the bar. He poured the champagne into glasses and said, but to family happiness. Why are you a bride? It's a sad joke. You imagined it. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, I heard somewhere that brides tend to get nervous before the wedding. So it's a lie. I guess so, Kelly said thoughtfully. Yeah, Christopher nodded. You'll invite me to the wedding. And as what? Asked the bride. That's a good question. But say, as a godfather. Why? Because that's essentially what it was. And it was true. Nancy Kazantseva grew up in a dysfunctional family. From the very early childhood, she saw nothing but dirt, the stench of perpetually drunken parents, fights, foul language, and marginalized people who in their house were not outnumbered. Every day there was a new character. Drunken parties usually lasted until the last guest left, that is, until morning. And Nancy didn't get much sleep. It was very hard for her to concentrate on her lessons, and the girl had a hard time mastering the material. It turned out that Nancy skipped classes because there was no one to wake her up. The result was 2 years into 5th grade when Nancy turned 12. Her father left this world before passing away. Liam the Rusty, as he was known for his fiery red mustache, drank for 2 whole weeks. When the valiant police and paramedics found many empty liquor bottles in the house, the precinct officer shook his head. It's strange that he didn't move 10 days ago. So much to drink. And judging by the smell, it's a hell of a mixture. The whole Mendeleev table. Liam Rusty's funeral was attended by all the local folk. Their private sector had its own elite. Good was a man, wiping away tears, said a spoiled woman of no certain age with impressive bags under the eyes and a dewy red nose. And a nail to hammer in will help, and on a bottle always borrowed. I mean borrowed. Sleep well, Liam. May you rest in peace. And the woman said in a bad voice. From the outside one could think that she had lost a close person, and only the daughter of the deceased sitting quietly in the corner knew that it was so. After the funeral of the head of the family, Nancy's mother went on a bender. Vanessa had left the house more than once for days at a time, and she didn't care one bit. Her daughter. And what would she wear to school? The poor girl was laughed at all the time. Nancy was called the daughter of an alcoholic and other bad words that meant that her mother was not only abusing alcohol. Over time, Nancy learned to ignore it. After all, she had no reason to be ashamed of herself. Yes, her mother drank and was not known for being picky. But after all, it wasn't Nancy's fault in any way. Children are not responsible for their parents. By the time she was 16, Nancy was a real beauty. Guys started looking at her, and girls started joking about her. She'd become just like her mom. Nancy swallowed it, and that only hurt. She wasn't really interested in boys, like most girls forced to grow up early. They seemed small to Nancy, and when she had seen him for the first time as an adult, she had realized that she preferred older men. That older man turned out to be a friend of one of her mother's suitors. That evening, Jacob had had too much to drink and called his buddy to pick him up while waiting for a sober driver. Vanessa and her lover secluded themselves in the bedroom, and Nancy settled down on the terrace with a cup of tea. To the amazement of the girlfriend, Jacob arrived in an expensive car. Could drunks really have friends in such cars? She wondered, looking at the impressive Jeep, and when the man got out of the car, she was even more surprised. He was dressed in a light-colored or other suit and what appeared to be a brand-name t-shirt. When the man approached Nancy, the girl embarrassedly lowered her eyes and saw dazzling white sneakers clearly from the same price segment. And this is a friend of Jacob's. Did he have the wrong address? Sorry, I did not get the wrong address, as if guessed her thoughts. Asked the man of Krasnodar. 11. That's right. Yes, nodded Nancy. You must be here to pick up Jacob. Yes, nodded the visitor with dignity. The man smelled of expensive perfume, tobacco, and something else that confused the girl even more. I'll call him hurriedly, she said, and she dashed into the house. Nancy caught her breath and knocked on the bedroom door. Jacob is here for you, she said in a voice that didn't sound like her own. Together they walked Uncle Vasia to the car, and when the man who had come for Vanessa's drinking companion sat down behind the wheel, he suddenly looked at Nancy attentively. The look of Jacob's friend threw her first into heat and then into cold. But maybe she had taken wishful thinking for granted, And no look had actually happened. A few days later, the man visited the Kazantsevs again. When Nancy saw out the window, the familiar Jeep, her heart pounded. So it seemed that it was about to pierce her chest. Yes, and go into free flight. And noticing the bouquet of tea roses in the man's hands, Nancy frowned. Had this respectable man set his eyes on her mother? And what was it? Perplexed, the girl thought. And when she realized she was jealous, she was horrified. He must be over 30, which by the standards of an 18-year-old girl means almost old age. Hello, he greeted Nancy. Hello, the girl replied discreetly, trying hard to appear calm. And my mom is not home. I'm not here to see your mom, smiled the man, holding out the flowers to Nancy. Do you like these? They are very beautiful, Nancy said, embarrassed. I've never been given flowers before. How old are you? The man chuckled. With such beauty. By the way, what is the name of one of the most beautiful girls of our city? Would you say she sparkled too? There are so many beauties in the city that the eyes are scattered, and me. And you just don't know your own value. In the city you say they're not beautiful, but spectacular. But you have real beauty from nature. So what's your name? Nancy blushed, the girl answered. But I'm Christopher. Let's get acquainted. And I've come to invite you to a restaurant. I'm going to a restaurant, Nancy exclaimed in amazement. You and you to the restaurant. Christopher confirmed with a smile. What's so surprising about me wanting to take a beautiful girl to a restaurant? Probably nothing, she replied, thinking. Only I don't have anything to go in. That's not a problem, the man assured her. Now we'll go through all the stores and buy you dresses. And there's shoes and jewelry and everything else. I don't even know, Nancy said at a loss. But why on earth would this flamboyant gentleman invite a girl from a family of alcoholics to a restaurant? Nancy was. Surely it is worth to this Bogachev only to whistle. All the most beautiful, spectacular women of the city will run away. Or doesn't she realize something? Afraid, Christopher stated. I do. I mean, we're practically strangers. But I assure you, I'm not doing you any harm. It's just that I liked you, and I wanted to get to know you better. I apologize if I've been intrusive. Well, I agree, Nancy interrupted. That trip was the beginning of an affair. A week later, Nancy moved into Christopher's luxurious 4-bedroom apartment. Vanessa breathed a sigh of relief. No one would be cramping her freedom now. Not spoiled by life. The girl was over the moon. The new life was a paradise. Christopher swamped Nancy with gifts, took her to restaurants for parties, took her to Spain for a week. Besides, he didn't go out, he didn't drink with his buddies, and for a month he never once raised his voice to Nancy. Why didn't you go to school anywhere? Asked Christopher once. I applied to technical school, but I didn't pass shyly, answered the girl. I see, nodded he. And for whom, if it's not a secret? On the secretary. Oh yeah. And why exactly on the secretary? It's not too high, he shrugged. It's not too high. Yeah, but what about the higher ones? No chance at all. No, Nancy replied nonchalantly. I didn't do well in school. I even had to repeat a year once. But that's okay, Christopher chuckled. There would be a desire to learn with this how. The desire is there. That's good. I'll take care of your education. You'll still graduate from my institute, he assured. I'll go to college. No, I can't. I say you can. There's nothing unrealistic. You'll see, you and me will make it. You and me. Those words sounded like music to Nancy. Well, he was the kind of man you could only dream of. Only he wouldn't marry her. But she thought it was only a matter of time. Alas, she was wrong. Before Nancy knew it, she and Christopher had been living together for 2 months. One morning, when Nancy was preparing breakfast for her beloved, she received a phone call from her neighbor, Aunt Olga, who was almost the only non-drinking woman in the neighborhood. Trouble. Nancy reread. Vanessa was gone. What happened? I got cold. Nancy turns out the mother fell asleep drunk with a cigarette, causing their dilapidated house to burst into flames like a cardboard box. Talking to a neighbor, Nancy found her hands shaking. The girl couldn't say she loved her mother much. And for what? For not having a normal childhood. For the ridicule that Nancy had to endure at her mercy. In that moment, however, she forgave her mother everything. Vanessa was gone, and now she would answer for all her sins before God. All expenses associated with the grief clap were borne by Christopher. The fairy tale ended as swiftly as it had begun. "Time to pay off the debts," he said one day. "What debts?" Nancy's brow furrowed in bewilderment. "What debts?" "Beauty parlors, shopping, doping, and all the other ladies' tricks, and finally, seeing your car off for the last time. All of which, as you realize, costs money." "But sunshine, I am not Mother Teresa or Santa Claus," nonchalantly said Christopher. "But you know I don't have any money of my own." Humiliated flew the girl. "No, you will. But you have a cute face and a cool figure. And you're a real piece of work when it comes to love. I'll tell you that much. And if you use it wisely, you'll have a beautiful life. Do you want to give me to a brothel?" she asked in horror. Christopher laughed out loud. "My doll, where did you get such thoughts? Narrow-minded princess. You're a one-of-a-kind item. Not for drunken sauna-goers. There's a whole world out there waiting for you. A new life and a new name." Nancy stared at her roommate in incomprehension. "Let's go to my office," he said. "This is the ticket to your new life," Christopher said, handing her a dark burgundy book, which on closer inspection turned out to be a passport in the name of Marlowe and Kelly. "But that's me," Nancy said confusedly, seeing the girl's face in the photo. "Of course it is. You confirmed henceforth you are Marlowe Kelly. I told you that you are starting a new life under a new name. And I'm giving you a job." "What kind of job?" "Now we're talking business. What should I call your job title?" "I'll formulate the hell out of it. I can't think of anything. But an errand clerk sounds good to me. Or maybe..." Nancy didn't argue. So Kelly's starting to realize what she's gotten herself into. She was too confused by the word specific, and in general. "What was I saying?" Christopher rejoiced, ignoring the expression on Nancy Kelly's face. "Read the job description." "No, I can't." The girl shook her head. Having listened to the job description, according to this, so to speak, document, Kelly was to be a con artist, for which all means are good, and when it came to a young and beautiful girl, she didn't even want to think about it. "You can," Christopher said in an icy voice. "You were able to accept gifts from me and go to restaurants, weren't you? And so we don't waste any time. Let's start working today." As already today, Kelly asked in a lowered voice. She was afraid to even guess what she would have to do. What was there to look forward to? "Fun," asked the employer. "You start sooner, you learn sooner, and you learn sooner, you learn faster. Consider me, and you will become an independent and self-sufficient lady with education. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten." The kid said the kid did the kid did the kid. "Besides, I'll give you some of the money in hand. But you have to dress up, take care of yourself. It's a profession." Christopher playfully pecked the girl's cheek, and at that moment Kelly realized she had no choice. "Serves you right. The fool did her worst torture. Thought you got it all for the pretty eyes. So let's work it off. Everything has to be paid for, especially pleasure." And now the first task. Christopher spoke in the tone of a strict but kind and fair teacher. Kelly sighed and prepared to listen. "There is in our glorious city one major, someone else slacker and idler." Sebastian began. He outlined the task. John Korov owns several parking lots in the city. The father of this very son was one of Christopher's main competitors. As for his son, Sebastian, a young hustler, the guy was a lover of love for sale. That's where the game was to be played. The fact that John ran for mayor of the city and his biography should be perfect. A son who likes to spend time with a love maid. You, what nonsense. The plan was for Christopher Sebastian to order a call girl who turns out to be Kelly. Christopher's people take photos of their playdates, and then it's a matter of technique. In this case, blackmail. And if John does not get off the track, the racy photos will fall into the hands of those who should not see them. The result is a scandal with all the consequences. The customer is a serious man, so it is very important not to justify. Finished with the instruction. No, I cannot. Snickly Kelly no, so after all, my darling on no and no judgment. Divorced Christopher. If you have the opportunity to pay me with a bill or a bank transfer, I'm all for it. Do you have any? No, she sighed. Then what are we talking about? Christopher had connections almost everywhere, including among pimps. Korov Jr. was a regular customer of all the offices, which meant that Christopher had every chance to realize his plan. And so it happened. 3 days after this conversation, Christopher received a phone call from a familiar mom, and the deal took place. And then there was a scam with the wife of Kelly's alleged lover. The girl showed up at the spouse's house and said she was dating her lover. And if you do not want those who are not supposed to know about Ivan's adventures, pay $100, said Kelly. The woman, unaware that her husband and the blackmailer did not even know each other, instantly paid the demanded amount. Since the time, Kel felt more confident. She was used to a new name, a new life, a new self. Now it seemed to Kelly that there was no Nancy Kazantsev. Living in the private sector of her parents' death was only Christopher in their business. In odd, Kelly caught herself thinking that she believed in the legends that he presented to his victims. Did Kellen feel sorry for these people? She had no clear answer to that question. On the one hand, yes, when Kel was talking nonsense with an honest expression on her face, she felt uncomfortable. Keep it simple, Christopher advised. It's better to think about the fact that some people have everything and others have nothing. Some have life on a plate, and some have to work their asses off and deal with problems all the time. You think I'd always lived like this? No, you haven't. I'm an orphan. You never talked about it. There was no reason to. And I didn't. I shrugged. And now he was shocked. It always seemed to the girl that the employer's roommate was a guy from a well-to-do family. Surprisingly, but after Christopher revealed to Kelly this part of his biography, he became closer to her. As a matter of fact, the close relationship was still going strong. But Christopher and Kelly became to each other more like good buddies, or in the depths of her soul, somewhere at the very bottom, close anger and love. And so 2 years passed. Remember, I was talking about your education. Frankly, she'd forgotten all about it. Moreover, Kelly now had little idea of herself as a student. I remember, she nodded. What's this? I think it's a good time to think about education. Besides, you're going to have to make the best of a bad situation. What's that? Kelly asked. It's like this. There's a guy named Michael Matthews at Polytechnic. The guy is mastering the hotel business, and it's no coincidence that his parents own a country hotel. And you, my princess, are to marry him, she marveled. Yes, I thought I made myself clear. You must marry him. But why? And this is already a business conversation, Christopher rejoiced. And the purpose of your marriage is simple, to get the apartment. But agree, you cannot live in my apartment all the time. So I'm letting you go. You set up your life and everything. Actually, Kelly was happy to live with Christopher, and she saw her life with him, no matter what the situation. She loved him more than life, and she couldn't help it. But she had to marry him, Kelly muttered. We do, Christopher nodded. Personally, I can see only one way to hit the apartment. Live there for 6 months. Then you file for divorce and voila. The apartment's all yours. But after the divorce, the apartment is usually forfeited, Kelly pointed out. You're smart, he said approvingly. You're changing the apartment. Unprofitable for your Supreminko. We under whom it is necessary. Well, what if there will be other applicants for the apartment? What applicants? No, but if you decide to have a baby, then sure. What a joke you're making. One thing I'm not going to do anytime soon is having a baby. I'm talking about his parents. What's his parents got to do with it? Christopher snorted. You don't think his parents are going to buy the newlyweds an apartment with their $1 million? Kelly, good point. Everything's gonna be just right. You'll be married to the sole heir to a wealthy man. You'll be rolling in the dough. Aha. Unless I'm married to the wrong person. Kelly thought bitterly. Oh my God. It's about time. The man I love is marrying me off. I don't care if his parents were 3 times as wealthy. Christopher, wake up. I don't want anyone but you. Don't you realize that? Okay. Well, what are we unhappy about? Christopher asked with a sigh. It's business, baby. It's nothing personal, yeah, she said quietly and repeated thoughtfully. It's nothing personal. Exactly. Oh yes, tomorrow we're going to apply to the Polytechnic Institute for the hotel business department. We'll make a cultured and educated lady out of you, winked the employer. Kelly couldn't sleep that night. She expected anything but this. No, Kelly, of course, had long ago realized that Christopher had no tender feelings for her. But this, yes, was a real spit in the face. Take it easy. She remembered Christopher's words. Kelly had a way of doing that, but not this time. Why are you so stupid? Angrily, she said, not even realizing she was speaking out loud. He doesn't need you. It's finally stupid. Kelly looked at Christopher. He was sleeping sweetly and probably had his 10th dream. And the girl decided that her marriage was not the worst idea. What if Christopher realizes he's lost Kelly and wants her back? It's a long shot, but that's what life is all about. Christopher took Kelly to a restaurant after she applied to the institute. But here's to a fresh start. Christopher smiled, raising his wine glass. Aha, she said languidly. You're taking it to the next level. Edifyingly, he said. Aha. Yeah, something took over. Aha. Aha. Christopher exclaimed. What's wrong with that? Did you know what you were getting into? I did. Kelly, but you're what you call a professional. So be one. Yeah, sure, I nodded. She's picking at her meat salad. There was no appetite at all. No matter how much Kelly tried to convince herself that this marriage would only benefit her, her soul desperately protested. This is it, Kelly thought, when she saw her name on the enrollment list. The machine had already been started, so it was too late. Michael Matthews was easy to charm. He's obviously inexperienced, Kelly thought. If he'd ever had a girlfriend, he didn't have much to brag about. Kelly suddenly felt like a femme fatale, and everything went according to plan. But the marriage proposal was still a long shot. And no wonder, because Michael was still a student, and therefore could not offer anything to his potential wife. Cool, you said. He is so good with you. Calmly, honestly. I would marry you even today. But first the institute, and then everything else. Well, that was to be expected. But Christopher demanded immediate results. So they had to use the heavy artillery, a non-existent pregnancy. Kelly was disgusted, but what could she do? The amount of debt was too high. Of course, the thought of not filing for divorce crossed her mind. And move on with Michael. But Christopher wasn't to be trifled with. 6 months at the most, he said. Like he was cutting it off. Letting Kelly know that trick wasn't gonna work. And she'd grown attached to Michael. Kelly felt a little sorry for him at times, the only heir to the Matthews fortune. He was just a kid. The chick had spoken contemptuously of him to Christopher, and in general was not far from the truth. But Kelly was uncomfortable with the feeling she had for Michael. It was like a mother's. And what mother would like it when someone spoke ill of her child? Besides, the girls at the institute were jealous of Kelly. Had they known, as for her feelings for Christopher, they, to her deepest regret, remained the same. However, the thought that the lover may realize who he lost firmly lodged in her head. The main thing is that the news that Kelly is pregnant should lead to a logical conclusion. Although, of course, closure was out of the question. After all, this was just the beginning. When Kelly had informed Michael that she was pregnant, She had felt like the ultimate asshole. Even though he'd said he was prioritizing his studies right now, he wasn't going to shirk his responsibilities. But how would Michael's parents feel about it? He assured them everything would be fine. But Kelly, unlike her fiancé, had no illusions and was absolutely right. You proposed to her. Adriana was furious. You're out of your mind. Since when is willingness to take responsibility a sign of insanity? The son asked with a wry chuckle. Kelly is pregnant, and as an honest man, I'm obliged to marry her. What's wrong? Everything is wrong. The mother cut him off. Kelly is a girl out of our league. But you know, mother, we're not of the Earl's class either. Besides, what's wrong with Kelly? She's pretty, she's studying, she's thinking about her future. Yeah, I can see how she thinks. Adriana. And you've been dreaming a lot about marrying a fool like you. But you don't know her at all, Michael. You've only seen her once, and such conclusions. Admit it, you were just jealous. Perhaps, Adriana admitted. She couldn't help admitting that she was. But that's not the point. She's kind of shady, and she's acting suspicious. Personally, I haven't noticed anything. But then again, my mother would have been sarcastic. You're in love. That's the point. Oh, Michael, I don't want to talk about it anymore. In time, you'll see that I'm right. Mother, no matter what you say now, I'm still going to marry Kelly. With an uncharacteristic firmness, Michael said. After all, I'm of age. You're the one who taught me to stand my ground. So you taught me to stand my ground. When did he grow up? Thought Adriana, who had only ever seen a guy who wasn't decisive. This guy didn't know what he wanted out of life. Now he seems to know. He's also learned to stand his ground. Do whatever you want. Adriana waved his hand. Don't say you weren't warned. Okay, I won't, Michael promised. And I also want it to be civil, so there's no talk of the Matthews hiding their only son's wedding. We'll have an engagement party to which our business partners will be invited. In Michael's opinion, it was prejudice. Who cares about his wedding? But I didn't argue. People, as you realize, are respectable, continued his mother. So I want your Kelly to hope for a little more decorum. No cleavage and slits to the navel. I do not want to blush for the future daughter-in-law. That's a little over the top. The mother clearly wanted to humiliate Kelly. Kelly had nothing but good taste, but Michael chose not to be provoked. For better or worse. But he and his mother had a deal. So was it worth teasing the geese? All right, Michael nodded. But as long as it's good, you can apply tomorrow. And on Saturday, the engagement party announced her plans to Adriana, and remembering, she added, oh, yes, the bride's parents' attendance is mandatory. Kelly took one last look in the mirror and was pleased with her reflection. She had never looked so beautiful. 300 hours at the salon had not gone to waste. The masseur, hairdresser, and makeup artist had done their best. The outfit was also above all praise and fully met the requirements of the future mother-in-law. Strictly evening dress protected the luxurious figure of Kelly, but at the same time did not reveal anything superfluous. Her breasts were covered, but everyone could notice how beautiful her collarbones were. Chic golden tan, obtained in the best tanning salon in the city, perfectly harmonized makeup in uncomfortable colors. Upon seeing the bride, Michael opened his mouth. These daughters of parents' business partners to as to heaven. With pride, he thought, she has, unlike these silicone, thick, different hair and eyelashes, natural beauty. Michael had not thought to pass on to Kelly his mother's words about how she should dress. Firstly, he was afraid of offending, and secondly, he knew that the bride would not hit the dirt. Vile and tasteless. Not Kelly. Kelly, you're charming, Ethan said gallantly. He kissed the girl's hand. Thank you for the compliment. She was checking, noticing out of the corner of her eye Adriana's unkind look. Kelly grinned to herself. The future mother-in-law clearly expected her to be vulgar, but not on that attack. The male half of the invitees kept their eyes on Kelly. The ladies present wrinkled their brows, but she was having fun. You think you've got the world in your pocket? I thought, Kelly, about businessmen's wives and business ladies. No way, no amount of plastic surgery can make you look any older than you are. At that moment, Kelly felt like a queen. Thoughts about Christority retreated not even to the second, and unknown to what plan. And the girl thought for the last few days for the umpteenth time that everything was not so bad. How many girls dream of being in her shoes? That's just it. Kelly, your parents didn't even fly in for your daughter's engagement party. In a fake sympathetic tone, Adriana asked. No, they didn't, she replied. They have a lot of work to do. That's how the lady of the house supposedly nodded understandingly. But I hope they'll be at the wedding. Yes, of course. Kelly nodded politely, wondering where she would get her parents. That's fine. Ethan intervened. Let's have a toast to our future family. That's a great idea, the wife exclaimed. How was the engagement? Christopher asked. It was fine, shrugged Kelly. True, the future mother-in-law so from Paralyzed me a look. But otherwise everything is very good. Men drooled, their wives were angry. In short, everything in the best traditions of secular society. There's more to come, smiled the benefactor. There will be more, sighed Anna Christopher. There's a little problem. On all ears, Michael's mother keeps talking about my parents. The first time we met, she asked who they were and what they did. Well, did you tell her they live abroad? They have a business there. Is that right? Approvingly, Christopher nodded. Then what's the problem? Yes, Adriana asked me about my parents too, which made me wonder if she suspected something. And then today, she asked about them again. Like I hope my parents will be at the wedding, Christopher said thoughtfully. I don't know what the hell that's about, but I don't like it at all. Yeah, well, whatever. We'll solve problems as they come. In the meantime, okay, you'll have parents. Kelly's parents turned out to be solid-looking people. The role of the bride's father was played by a man about 45 years old. According to Christopher, they pulled more than one case for the role of the mother of the newlyweds and invited a beautiful, slender brunette about the same age. Kelly, don't you think you look like a mother? Christopher winked as he introduced them. She looked at the woman closely and found that Christopher was right. The resemblance was indeed there. The woman had been a theater actress in the past, and her name was Christina. Rumbled the swarm so no one would know for sure, and everything would go off in the best possible way. The marriage of Michael and Kelly took place on New Year's Eve. Past the session, go on a wedding trip, Ethan said. Thailand. The wedding did go off without a hitch. It couldn't have been otherwise. Christopher Kelly and her parents had planned every detail and thought of everything. What business are they engaged in? Where did they meet? What Kelly was like as a child, and so on. Christopher also attended the wedding and introduced himself as the bride's godfather. The parents of the groom sort of calmed down, but Kelly was wondering what would happen next. In Thailand, the newlyweds went on excursions, but most often just walked around and went to local restaurants. Kelly was surprised to realize that she liked spending time with Michael on vacation. He's different, she thought. Michael had had to vacation in Thailand before, so he was only too happy to work as a personal guide for his beautiful wife. The only thing that embarrassed Kelly was having to pretend to be pregnant. She burst through more than once to tell her husband that no child they will not have. But Michael had been so touching in his concern for her. Plus, there's no telling how he'd react to being lied to. And more importantly, for what purpose? 2 weeks of vacation flew by like a day. Kelly hated to go back. She also felt sorry for Michael. She felt sorry for herself too. How are you looking? Christopher winked playfully at Pauline. The honeymoon's been good for you. Watch out, I'll get jealous. And Kelly suddenly realized with amazement that she did not care. It wasn't that long ago that she'd been wishing she did. Christopher had really lost me, Kelly thought. In every way. If it weren't for this stupid assignment, why aren't you being affectionate? Christopher squinted. Come on, admit it. Did you swim? That's out of the question. Remember who you are and who they are. I remember everything perfectly. Cold, she said. Well, don't forget. I wish I knew what to do about pregnancy, Kelly sighed. A pillow. Why a pillow? Good of you to bring it up. By the way, nodded Christopher. So you're thinking about the case. Well, that's commendable. What about the pregnancy? I faked a miscarriage. Like I know what that's like. What's the internet for? The miscarriage was almost a joke, but Christopher fixed it. The problem was solved with two $10 bills. You're a human orchestra, Kelly said to her patron, but he only waved it off. He was more concerned about something else. When would Matthews buy the newlyweds an apartment? It was out of the question. Kelly disappointed him. They'd said something about buying us an apartment when Michael graduated, and Christopher grumbled no better. So there's no way to influence them. I wonder how. The circus on Lanyo. Ethan, it's okay. My mother-in-law can't stand me. Can you do anything about it? My darling Christopher. And why would you want to influence them directly? I understand that your husband is crazy about you. Or am I wrong? No, Kelly blushed. Then what's the point? The point is that it seems to be mutual. No, it's not about anything. With a sigh, the young woman shook her head. Well, I'll try to influence Michael. I won't, Christopher said stiffly. I will. All right, I will, Kelly said obediently. It's been 3 months. Unfortunately, it's easier said than done. One day, Kelly told her husband that it would be a good idea to get an apartment and live separately. Get an apartment? Michael was surprised. What's the need? But we could be alone together more. The young wife smiled slyly. Yes, we seem to have it pretty good now, he remarked. That's true. There were 5 rooms in the Matthews apartment. Ethan and Adriana worked late. Plus, they traveled a lot. Anyway, it wasn't much of an argument. Well, I don't like coming out of the bathroom in a towel and running into your father in the hallway, said Kelly another time. And Adriana doesn't like it. I wish we had a separate apartment. Kelly actually ran into Ethan in the hallway. Only once was she actually wearing the same towel. She wasn't naked. Michael had his hands full. That's right. And the father-in-law only delicately averted his eyes. Adriana seemed to trust her husband. Otherwise, she would have long ago judged her son and daughter-in-law far away. In short, Kelly was forced to admit that this argument was not good for anything either. Harewell, be patient for a couple of years, and we will have a separate apartment, Michael exhorted her. Parents promised. And to rent it. Agree, not an option. You and I are still studying. I don't have money for a rented place. I don't want to ask my parents. You're right, Kelly thought sadly. But you have no idea who you're dealing with. She wanted to howl with longing and hopelessness. I don't know. How can I influence Michael? In despair, she said to Christopher. Well, I don't know. That's all. I tell Michael that I want to live with him separately. And he says, we don't have the money to rent a place. So let him know you're not interested in rented accommodation. The patron spread his hands. But it's not even better, Kelly exclaimed. And how do you envision it? Honey, let your parents buy us an apartment. But you have to admit, that's crazy. What if he said, let your parents do it, too? Why? I mean, they're wealthy. Yes, Christopher said thoughtfully. I guess you're right. Okay, I have an idea. It was said with military menace, and Kelly became alert. What kind of idea? Ma'am. You'll know a lot. You'll be old soon enough. The newlyweds' life went on as usual. Ethan and Adriana had grown accustomed to their daughter-in-law, and slowly but surely, things were getting better between them. Kelly's parents supposedly traveled back overseas, but visited the Matthews before they left. The first time, Adriana graciously invited them to dinner. Mrs. Matthews, who has long dreamed of going international, transparently hinted at doing business together. We will think about it with dignity, Noah promised. The second visit was made on the occasion of the arrival of the young people from their wedding trip. My new life consists of a lot of lies, Kelly concluded. A sad conclusion. She couldn't wait to get out of it, but something told her it wouldn't end well. Her intuition was not fooling Kelly. "So this is it, my children," Adriana announced at breakfast. "Tomorrow we're going on vacation for a month. So for a month you're going to be masters of this place. And where did you get shot at?" As we were leaving, Michael was curious. "Montenegro." "Cool." "Yeah," my mother smiled. "And to say 2 years of hard work." The next day, as Michael sat in the library, his phone rang. It was his father. "Yes, Dad, hello. How may I address you?" It was asked in a man's voice. "I'm Michael Matthews," he replied, coldly. It was clear that something terrible had happened to his parents. "You are the son of Matthews, Ethan, and Adriana," the voice clarified. "Yes, that's right. Michael is with you. This is Police Major Mason. I'm very sorry, but your parents were killed in a traffic accident. I'm so sorry for your loss." Michael was terrified and couldn't say a word. And Major Mason asked Michael if you could come up for a lineup. "Yes, of course," he said sadly. "Come where?" "Write down the address." Kelly cried when she heard about the death of her husband's parents. She couldn't believe it. And not just that. The young woman was afraid to think about it. But it was obvious. "Okay, I have an idea." Christopher's voice haunted Kelly everywhere, at home, at the Institute, at the morgue where she'd volunteered to go with the grief-stricken Michael, and at the cemetery. "Yeah, he's a scary man," she thought. "And that's the man I loved. How could I be any better? If Michael hadn't met me, would his parents still be alive? Not if I hadn't met that monster. Yeah, I should have run like hell to get away from him." After the wake, Michael told Irina about his childhood, about how he didn't go to school and protest, and her heart burst with pity. She had never imagined it would end so horribly. At times, Kelly hoped she was wrong. After all, there are coincidences. And 3 days later, Christopher called. "Come over," he said. "I have to talk to him." "Okay, I'll be there in an hour," Kelly sighed. "I thought with a sinking feeling that now I'd know for sure." "Michael, I'm gonna go get the groceries," she told her husband. "The refrigerator is empty." Michael nodded and continued to pretend to watch TV. And Kelly put on jeans, gave out a light glass jacket, and taking her purse from the shelf, left the apartment. "Honestly, you have a grin written all over your face," Christopher muttered. "Yes, I didn't do it myself, of course." "You were interested, weren't you?" "What kind of scumbag are you?" Kelly shook her head. "But take it easy," he grimaced. "You've forgotten what hole I pulled you out of, and for words like that, you might not get out of here. Unless they carry you out of here, under the cover of night. I don't care anymore. I got nothing to lose." "You're probably right," Christopher nodded. "But don't get your hopes up. It's so easy to get away with it. You're brave. Think about it. What good would your untimely death do me? Except to get my hands dirty. No, it's time to go to Plan B." "All right. I'll help you complete your mission, and you can be free to go." "What's the plan?" "I can't hear the enthusiasm in your voice." He scolded Kelly and laid out the plan. "And not to waste time, tomorrow we will start my plan cheerfully," said Christopher. "I dare not delay you any longer." Kelly sullenly took home and wondered if she should tell Michael. And then what would happen? Michael, of course, will hate me, probably want to divorce me. By the way, Christopher needs a divorce. Yeah, but I don't want to take away Michael's apartment and his business. And then it's his parents' apartment, not marital property. What the hell is a divorce? The young woman's thoughts bounced back and forth, but nothing came to mind. Kelly knew that Christopher had the means to juggle everything. So the apartment would end up being posted. And if she gave her notice already, she'd be in trouble. They'll just take her away to some woods and call it a day. Let it go, Kelly summed up. It was not in her position to make any sudden moves. Kelly went to the store and after buying bread, milk, potatoes, and chicken fillets, went up to the apartment. It was quiet there. Michael had fallen asleep in front of the television with the remote control in his hand. Poor little guy. With sympathy, she thought. doesn't even know what's in store for him. For a second, she thought about telling Michael. Who knows, maybe the two of them could work something out. But the fear was stronger. Maybe it's not the right time. But what's wrong? Did you flinch? Asked the husband. No, nothing's wrong, Kelly reassured him. It's just that my godfather is coming to visit us. He was at our wedding, remember? Yeah, I remember, Michael sighed. But to be honest, I didn't really feel like having guests. I see, she sighed back. Well, I'll tell him what. It's fine, let him come over. He waved his husband's hand sluggishly. Really? No, if you do not mind. I understand everything. What's the big deal? Christopher showed up a couple days later with a large antelope suitcase. How long are you staying? Michael asked. We'll see. Vaguely answered the guest, and Kelly thought better of herself. Think, you fool. She cut herself off. How do you feel about casinos? Asked Christopher. Never once visited this institution, he admitted. So this gap must be filled. Cheerfully said the godfather of the wife. But to be honest, I have a prejudice against casinos. Come on, what's the reason? Just heard about people getting hooked on gambling. I'm too suggestible. There was a time when I had to learn to overcome the inability to say no and stand my ground. And as Christopher hummed, it worked. Michael smiled. Otherwise, Kelly and I wouldn't be married right now. What are you talking about? Imagine, to be honest, my parents were against our marriage at first, but I insisted. Well, then you're just gonna have to go to the casino, exclaimed the guest. As long as you're okay with it, there's no risk of you getting locked up. And then you just have to know where to go. So how about a casino? Why not? That night, Michael won a large sum of money and was euphoric. He treated everyone there to expensive champagne, then continued to play and won again. After that, Trinity went to one of the best restaurants in the city. And the next evening, Michael offered to go to the casino again. This time, the wins were followed by losses. But in the end, Matthews left the gambling establishment not empty-handed. Well, guys, let's go play tonight, he asked over dinner. Maybe we shouldn't, Kelly said shyly. Of course we should, said Christopher. The excitement's still there. You gotta play. What a load of crap. After losing almost all his savings, Michael became desperate, and then he tried to pay off his debt and failed miserably. So the heir to the late owners of the country hotel became a regular at the casino. He was in and out of luck, and it got to the point that one day the casino owner wouldn't let him play. When you pay back what you owe, then we'll talk, he said. Mind they're a charitable organization. Kelly doomed herself by watching her lover. Yes, that's how a husband turns into an affair. But there was nothing she could do to help him. She could help herself. And when Christopher winked at Kelly and said, well, is it time? All she had to do was resign herself to fate. Michael has a theme, Christopher said. What's the subject? It's about your duty. Yes. Indifferently, he asked. Michael's brain was so foggy that he did not understand. Here he was the culprit of his current problems, and therefore he trusted Christopher unconditionally. Anyway, Michael, I want to buy your debt. I don't even have any money, and they won't let me play, sighed Matthews. Yeah, but you have a business and an apartment left over from your parents. I don't inherit until 6 months from now. Oh, come on, Christopher laughed. I'm on. What can I arrange? Everything. So you don't have to wait 6 months. Really? Really, he replied. You describe the business and the apartment to me, and you don't owe anyone or anything. But where am I going to live? Don't worry about that. We'll summarize your housing. Kelly, who was putting on a mask at the time, had a darkening in her eyes. Did it dawn on the young woman what kind of trap she had fallen into? What if it had been an apartment jointly acquired during the marriage? Kelly thought, but suddenly realized there would probably be no exchange. Christopher would have taken possession of the apartment anyway and set her and Michael adrift. And since that was the case, Michael shook her head. What am I hearing? Christopher said mockingly. His voice broke through. Why didn't you say something before? Silent about what? With suspicion, asked Michael. Michael, I can explain, Kelly exclaimed. I couldn't let you explain to me what's going on. The husband couldn't take it anymore. However, he was beginning to realize that everything from their marriage to Kelly to the appearance of Christopher was for a reason. Yeah, he got me hooked on the game on purpose. Michael gasped to himself. I still haven't learned how to say no, you idiot. Allow me a courteous tone, Christopher asked and began to tell. After hearing him, Matthews clutched his head. Michael, that's not quite true. Kelly flipped through it. He didn't tell you everything. I also love you. What a touching laugh from Christopher. I wondered what was missing from that story. But now that we're in the middle of it, I can in good conscience tell you to get out. And you, Mr. Matthews, I'll see a notary tomorrow. I'll draw you an address. And yes, I don't advise you to go to the police. You probably know that. But where should we go? Kelly asked. That's your problem, Christopher said. Michael, where are you going now? In a pitiful voice, Kelly asked. Anywhere. He cut him off. What about me? What does this have to do with us getting divorced? How did you want it? And Michael, but I love you. And I still don't understand you, of course. Where am I? Mommy and Daddy to my son, Michael said bitterly. And then it hit him. Those two were responsible for the death of his parents. All right, Kelly, let's split up. I'll call you later and we'll talk about the divorce. What do you say? The wife said quietly and walked away. Michael walked on and thought about where to stay. He sat down on a bench and took his cell phone out of his pocket and started calling his friends. Michael, I'd love to, but I'm flying to Sochi today. No, man, I'm sorry, but my parents are against it. Oh no, I'm with a girl. So you understand. He understood. He realized he had no friends as such. All the Matthews' few relatives lived in other cities. Michael didn't want to bother them. What a shame. Not only was his wife not who she said she was, but her godfather, who turned out to be a former roommate, had put him in debt. Michael wandered through the city and did not notice how he found himself on the outskirts of one of the most shabby neighborhoods. Meanwhile, Kelly was mourning her failed life. Christopher really didn't tell Michael everything, like the fact that Kelly, like himself, was also working off a debt. And then Christopher never coordinated his actions with her. Take the car accident that Ethan and Adriana got into. And Michael would probably blame me for their deaths. Desperate, the young woman thought. And he's right. If I hadn't come into his life, what good would it do to think about it? Kelly stood on the bridge and looked thoughtfully at the river. The current was very fast, and in some places there were whirlpools. It was dangerous to swim here. But it was easy to get out of life. The young woman resolutely put her foot over the railing. And what are you thinking? She heard a man's voice, and a second later, she felt someone grab her arm. Let me go, Kelly shouted. Who are you to take over my life? But the man in his 50s paid no attention to her cries. He put Kelly in an old jegulanuk, and only then spoke. Who am I? I'm a man who served in a hot spot, and I've seen people who desperately cling to even the tiniest chance of survival. Do you really think I'd let someone drive off a bridge like that? Kelly didn't answer. Her tears prevented her from speaking. But crying will make it easier, the man said, holding out a wet washcloth to Kelly. It won't. When the young woman gradually calmed down, the unexpected savior handed her a small bottle of mineral water and said, Well, tell me what happened to you. You know, I think you're going to be fine, said the man whose name was James. How old are you? Well, the fact that you have nowhere to go is fixable. Fixable? Kelly sighed. In what way? Let's go, the man said, starting the car and seeing the doubt in Kelly's eyes. He added, Don't worry. I don't hire people for specific assignments. Although from what point of view? Let's go and see for yourself. They drove up to a small hospital drowning in greenery, which was beginning to blossom. In the courtyard of the hospital stood a small and very beautiful church. "So Kelly thinks you have a place to live and a job now." James smiled. "You see, that outhouse over there is a lighthouse where you will live. What kind of job do you want to offer me?" "As the chief physician of this medical institution, I want to offer you the position of an orderly. It's important," he said. "Thank you very much," Kelly smiled. "I don't know how to thank you, but I'll thank you kindly, James, when I get the chance. In the meantime, go make arrangements. If you want to take a shower, go to the hospital building and see the hostess nurse. I'll let her know." So Kelly found herself some shelter and a job. She dutifully performed the duties of a nurse. She socialized with the staff and slowly forgot her old life. Now, for the first time in her life, Kelly could say that she was truly happy. And even if Kelly did not live in a 5-room apartment and did not visit beauty salons, but her conscience was clear. If there was anything that marred the young woman's life, it was the longing for Michael. It had been over a month since the Matthews soul hair had led a vagabond life, the day Christopher had driven Michael out of his own apartment. He had stumbled into the rather spacious basement of an abandoned house. To his amazement, there was a desk, but also an old armchair. Michael had some money left, so the problem with food was also solved. But he realized that one day his savings would run out and he would have to look for a job. At first, the new vagabond thought of settling in some hostel. But having imagined how he would present his passport in the name of Matthews Michael Ethanovich, he gave up this idea. Shame and shame. After all, the surname is known in the city. Besides, he was afraid that Christopher's men were looking for him. Sleeping in a chair all night, Michael got up somehow. His legs stiffened, and his 5th point was square. "We should go to the dump. Maybe I can find some old blankets there," he thought. He didn't have to go far for blankets. As Michael walked out of the yard, he saw a dumpster with something gluey peeking out of it. It was definitely blankets, and he quickened his pace. To Michael's great joy, the blanket was not the only one. A comfortable recliner was assured. He thought happily and carried the blanket to his new dwelling. The main advantage of living on the outskirts of the city was that no one knew Michael. He worked part-time as a loader in 2 stores nearby. Sometimes he went to the dump, where he sometimes found quite decent household items. Occasionally, he found some nice dishes. But Michael was reluctant to pick them up. Who knows what the previous owner of the cups and spoons had been ill with? From time to time, Michael felt like a character in an adventure movie or a reality show and caught himself thinking that he liked this life. However, that didn't mean that Michael didn't want to return to normal life, and he vowed that he would do it. But Michael didn't know how. But he knew for sure that now he would avoid the casino a kilometer away. He would reinstate himself at the Institute and get back what was rightfully his. Sometimes Michael thought about Kelly, but he tried to keep thoughts of his wife, which she still was. When Michael called, she was unavailable. "Well, I'll look into it later," he decided. After all, Kelly wasn't a needle. She'd find it. One day, on another trip to the dump, Matthews stumbled upon an old, shabby, but quite good-looking sofa made of substitute leather. Fortunately, the dump was not too far from the basement, so Michael had no problem transforming the sofa into his own. As the young vagrant breathed, the thought occurred to him that maybe there was some bedding inside the couch. But what Michael saw inside the couch nearly robbed him of his sanity. It was a suitcase full of large bills and rubles. Michael pulled out the money, and his hands trembled. He counted 100 wads. And when Matthews started counting them, he couldn't hold back a sigh of disappointment. They were dolls. Only the top and bottom 10 bills were real. After all, 2,000 isn't bad either, Michael thought. It'll be enough for a lawyer to help me deal with the inheritance. There must be something to do about this Christopher. Michael did not go to any notary at that time. I mean, it was clear he'd be dealt with later. And he did. Michael Matthews was bound to survive. A couple days later, there was a knock at the basement. Who could it be? Michael thought. He froze in fear and decided not to open the door. but the knocking became more and more insistent. "Open the door, police." There was a stern male voice. This was the last thing I needed. On the doorstep stood two men who looked less like policemen than anything else in the world. One of them had a big swagger and gold teeth. A man, about 30 years old, dressed in a tracksuit. "Hello," Matthews replied confusedly. "Hey, bro. I think you took something that doesn't belong to you," said another type, short, full, and also in a tracksuit. "Better, or rather, nicely." "Took what?" Michael asked. "Come on," shouted the first one, and kicked him in the stomach and pushed him. A sharp pain pierced the whole body, and Michael lost consciousness. The last thing the son of the late rich man remembered. There was blood on his hand, which he involuntarily brought to his face. Ethan and Adriana smiled from their son and waved. And then the parents dissolved into the darkness and disappeared. "No," whispered Michael. "Mom, Dad, don't go." Waking up, he heard a painfully familiar female voice. "With such a serious wound," said a surprised male voice. "I thought he wouldn't make it." Michael slowly opened his eyes. Consciousness was still conceived on anesthesia, and he seriously thought that he had fallen into the next world. Where else would he meet his parents? Kelly whispered to Michael, "Did you die too?" "No," Michael replied with a smile, rubbing his forehead with a damp cloth. "I'm more alive than ever." "But you, if it wasn't for a random passerby that stabbed me, you don't remember." "I remember being stabbed in the stomach, and then I blacked out. I'm thirsty." "You can't have one yet." Kelly shook her head. "You can only look at your lips, and then you'll be examined by a doctor." "What are you doing here?" Michael whispered. "I work as an orderly," she replied. "But let's talk about that." "Then you can't talk much. I wouldn't survive if anything happened to you," the young woman added in her mind. When Michael was taken to the hospital, Kelly lost the floor in the hallway. "A bum was brought in again with a sigh," said the nurse Anya. "Whenever I'm on shift, it's always a bum. First of all, it's a person who needs our help. A knife wound is not a joke," said James, who was nearby. "So, honorable colleagues, sign it, and don't let me hear it again." "He's not such a bum," said Dr. Charles after examining the patient. "He has a passport." "So what's he like?" "Matthews Michael Ethanovich." Hearing this name, Kelly ran up to the new arrival. This overgrown bum is not her husband's age, which has already brought him to this state. What if she's wrong? "Can I see the passport?" Kelly asked. "Yes, please." Charles shrugged. "I know him slowly," she mouthed. "It's my husband." For 4 whole days, Michael remained unconscious. All this time, Kelly went to church and prayed for him. The young woman believed. They met for a reason. 2 days after Michael regained consciousness, he was feeling much better. Kelly had been by his side all those days. The end of April was almost summer hot. The couple sat in the hospital garden and sighed with pleasure at the enchanting scent of spring. "Michael, I really couldn't have warned you then," the young woman said one day about what was tormenting her. "I was doing my duty, like you." And then Christopher. Quietly, with a smile, her husband reassured her and stroked her cheek. "It's all right. Let's forget about it like a bad dream. It's just a pity about the money." "What money?" When he told Kelly about his find at the dump, she sighed and replied, "You know, Michael, I don't think you should regret that money. It wouldn't have made you happy. That kind of money can't make a man happy at all. It has to be earned. And only in this case, money will provide a man with what he seeks: comfort, well-being, and everything else." "You're so smart, you know," he said admiringly, kissing Kelly on the temple. "You're right. It's just that this money could help us." "Help us with what?" "The only thing I care about right now is getting my apartment and my business back." "You know, Kelly, it wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I realized how important this is to me. I mean, this hotel is my parents' life's work and everything. And when I found that money, I thought it was a chance." "A chance?" Sadly, she grinned. "A chance to what?" "To give up my life." It was obvious that those dolls were put there on purpose. They just didn't think anyone would put that couch to shame. We'll figure something out about getting the apartment and the business back. What is there to think of? Michael sighed. Do you have any idea how much a good lawyer costs? There'll be a day, there'll be food philosophically, Kelly remarked. Also true, Kelly. Yeah. Do you want us to be together? Aya. She smiled and whispered larger than life. Michael was making a steady recovery, only where to go after the hospital. You can live with me in the outhouse, Kelly said. I don't think James would mind. It's not a 5-room suite, but it's still a roof over your head. Not a basement on the outskirts of town, he chuckled, and the couple laughed merrily. Kelly continued to work as a nurse, and Michael took a job as a handyman. Not the limit of dreams, but the young people believed that everything would be fine. But the Matthews couple were wrong. What awaited them next was simply wonderful. In the evening, when Michael was resting after work, Kelly was about to return from her shift. A policeman came to the outhouse, and William, the Matthews family lawyer. So this is where you're hiding, Michael Ethanovich. The lawyer said cheerfully, I've done something. He asked in surprise. You didn't. But Christopher, Aka. Igor is on a bender, said the policeman. He got caught in another scam. And the investigation came to the case of the death of your parents, as well as the case of your apartment. And then there's more. They found the perpetrator who set up your parents' car accident. In general, Michael Ethanovich, you have a real chance to get back your legal inheritance. The man smiled. And we can live in my parents' apartment. Not believing his happiness, Michael asked. William looked questioningly at the policeman, and he answered, At the moment your parents' apartment is sealed, but after the trial you can move in. So you'll have to stay here for a week. Hello. Kelly greeted the men as they entered. What's up? Everything is great, Michael exclaimed. The policeman, whose name was Liam, handed them their summonses, and the guests turned away. So what's the matter? Kelly asked. The point is that your godfather will get what he deserves, her husband proclaimed cheerfully and surrounded her across the room. Put me in my place, with courtly severity, said the young woman. You are not allowed yet. Better tell me the details. Yes, with pleasure. The trial went off without a hitch. The swindler got 8 years, and then the Matthews couple, thanked James profusely, moved into Michael's parents' apartment. Nothing's changed, he commented, but we should check to make sure that the spirit of this Christopher is not here. Kelly grimaced, and seeing his silver lighter on the table, ostentatiously tossed it into the trash. After all the trials that fell to their share spouses, Matthews decided to get married. The sacrament of marriage took place a month after the triumphant return to the apartment. Which church should we choose? Michael asked his wife. I think the answer is obvious. Kelly smiled. The one at the hospital. The whole hospital staff was invited to the wedding, admiring the beautiful couple and genuinely happy that their hardships were behind them. Maybe we could go to a restaurant, Michael suggested. I would love to, but work is not waiting. James replied with sincere regret. Is it true? Said, we're short-staffed, so we're working weekends. So the guys will notice another time, smiled Matthews. Then we invite everyone to the new year. But we still have to live till the new year, grinned the head doctor. But thank you for the invitation. On the way home, the couple bought a bottle of wine and ordered dinner at a restaurant. Michael and Kelly sat on the loggia and with tenderness, looking at each other, savoring Serbian pomegranate wine. I look at the stars and remember my parents, Michael confessed to his wife. And I, too, with a sigh responded to the death of my parents cannot be called worthy. But they did not stop being my parents. Back at the hospital, Kelly told him about her real parents, and it brought them even closer together. It couldn't be otherwise. There were no secrets between them now. I think that both my parents and your parents are looking down on us from heaven and rejoicing, Michael said, taking her hand in his. Kelly looked at her husband with gratitude, and tears and happiness glistened in her eyes. Michael entered into the rights of inheritance. He was reinstated in the institute and now combined his studies and work. In addition to an apartment and a country hotel, parents left the young a substantial sum of money, and the need to work in the hospital was no longer necessary. The couple often visited James and the other employees, who were always happy to see them. Kelly was also planning to reinstate herself at the institute, but it looked like that would have to wait. An incomplete course, the dean said. So I can't help you. The young woman was upset, but after a few days she learned that there was nothing to grieve about. We are going to have a child, said Kelly Michael, who at that time was sitting at the lecture. Olenka, it's true, shouted he absent-mindedly, forgetting where he was. The professor looked disapprovingly at the Matthew student, and Michael smiled disarmingly. I'm sorry, Matvey Semyonovich, he said. It's just that I just found out that I'm going to be a father. Well, congratulations, smiled involuntarily back at the professor. But please keep your voice down. All right, Michael assured him. Everything that had happened to him had completely changed his life. From that moment, Michael felt really grown up and strong. Long ago, his grandmother used to say that all trials are given to a person for something. Michael didn't understand it at that time because of his young age. But now he's a 20-year-old man who does. He and Kelly had to go through what they went through. Otherwise, they wouldn't have realized they needed each other. No, with an obscenely happy smile, Michael was thinking, barely catching on to what the professor was saying. We don't just need each other. We're made for each other. The story of their acquaintance could not be called romantic, and what happened next was more like a fairy tale. So what? At least they're doing great now. After all, they say the harder it rains, the brighter the sun will shine. 8 months from now, a bundle of helium and pink-colored balloons soared into the sky, and people standing in the courtyard of the maternity hospital shouted hooray for good luck. May he grow up healthy. Michael held his newborn daughter in his arms and felt like the king of the world. But Kelly, holding a giant bouquet of roses, smiled and felt like the happiest and most beloved woman in the world. Come and see us again, the midwife said with a smile. The woman, who had delivered more than 100 babies, spoke the usual memorized words. But those words seemed to be addressed exclusively to them. We will, the young father declared. And we will do it more than once. Really, my favorite, of course, smiled Kelly. And the employee of the maternity hospital, in turn, thought that these two really visit here, and more than once.